Welcome back to the FPL deadline stream, this time out of Game Week 9, and we do have a new injury update from the morning about Gabriel Magalhaes, who is doubtful to play Crystal Palace on Sunday, and that hasn't really changed too much in terms of my transfer plans because I already talked about possibilities of reinforcing my defensive line, and that only, if anything, increase the chances of me making that transfer and making this even better because a Game Week 10 bench boost is also on the cards. And whilst the Game Week 9 one doesn't look too shabby, I've got Conte facing Man City at home. Also, Renildo Mandava away to Chelsea. I would expect him to start, but even then, the fixture isn't great on paper. And I've currently got Lacroix starting against Arsenal away, and he might even come back into my starting 11 regardless of what I do, because Conte's the one to sell on my defensive line, and Lacroix would be first on my bench if I make that transfer, and he could come on for the injured Gabriel Magalhaes if he does miss out on Sunday. With the captaincy, Semenyo is currently the vice, but I'm less keen on him as a captaincy option in general, with Sean Dyche getting his first win in the first match, of course, for Nottingham Forest against Porto in the Europa League, and ultimately I would expect a managerial bounce there. With Ange Postecoglou, it would have been a different story, so Erling Haaland currently takes the armband. This was all discussed in my team selection, but throughout today's podcast, I'll be providing an ultimate guide with all the latest team news, injury updates, clean sheet odds, top 10 captains, and answering all your dilemmas with benching headaches, also which goalkeeper to start, and maybe the captaincy choices as well. So everything you need to know will be here for Fantasy Premier League and UCL Fantasy across the course of the season. Drop a like, subscribe, and also hit the notification bell. We are closing in on 37 subscribers, and the aim will be to get to that milestone within the next couple of weeks. So the first question is actually in Spanish, which might be a first on this channel. And Ignacio says, Grande Dylan, muy top el match day 3 de UCL Fantasy. Valoro seriamente comodín para hoy. Dubravka, eso es Sánchez. Gay, Porro, Calafiori, Renildo Mandava, Anderson, Salah, Semenyo, Kudus, Reinders, Camara, Erling Haaland, Voltemada, Beto. Para ti, wildcard. Para mí, tus delanteros, por lo menos Haaland y Voltemada, son muy buenos y lo mantendría en un comodín. Beto nunca me gustó como una opción en Fantasy, así que para mí es alguien para vender y es muy fácil hacerlo con el comodín. En tu medio campo, no son malas opciones en general, pero Camara, creo que por 5 millones y por ahí tienes a Granit Xhaka y otros jugadores como Caicedo que mencioné antes, pero creo que el medio campo es el peor parte de tu equipo. No es malo y Salah, por ejemplo, puede anotar un gol o dos contra Brentford, pero no está jugando bien últimamente. Semenyo está muy bien, obviamente, eso está muy claro, pero Kudus para mí es alguien para vender en las próximas semanas y Reinders también. Con tu defensa, para mí, zafa. Y hasta tu arqueros, hasta, no sé, la jornada 10-11, para mí puede hacer algo, pero yo usaría el comodín simplemente por tu medio campo y con eso puedes obtener a uno de Mateta, Joao Pedro, Gyökeres como delantero para reemplazar a Beto y también a Igor Thiago. Y después, para mí, cambiarías 4 de los mediocampistas y mantendrías a Semenyo. Y en la defensa, no hay mucho para corregir, pero creo que haría cambios con tus arqueros, uno de Russia o Nick Pope. Y después Dubravka está bien como tu suplente. Y con Crystal Palace quizás puedes ir por Muñoz en vez de Gay. Sacar a Porro. Para mí es medio difícil con Gabriel porque es una posibilidad que no juegue contra Crystal Palace, como dije recién en inglés. Así que con Arsenal quizás es mejor ir por Timber en este momento. Y si ya tienes a Raya en gol, también puedes mantener a Calafiori por una semana más también. Renildo no es una mala opción, pero Sunderland tiene malos partidos que vienen y creo que va a empezar contra Chelsea mañana. Pero sí, creo que el comodín sería muy útil para tu medio campo. No es necesario, no lo tienes que usar ahora y para mí tu equipo puede zafar hasta la jornada 11 o 12 y muchos jugadores van a usar el comodín en la jornada 13, pero sí, yo creo que lo usaría ahora en tu caso. Sam says starting 11, Sanchez, Gabriel, Virgil van Dijk, Porro, Semenyo, Eze, Kudus, Mbumo, Bowen, Haaland, Pedro. Have 2 free transfers, 0 money. W to get rid of Porro, Kudus. Also want Saka, Enzo, and Sarr or Mateta. Suggestions. The problem with Arsenal and Crystal Palace players is that they play each other on Sunday, and with Gabriel being an injury out now, that makes things even more complicated in certain scenarios. But I do like the ideas, and I just said in Spanish now to Ignacio that whilst a lot of these picks can still be decent until game week 11 to 13, players like Kudus, for example, I'd be quite happy to sell in the coming weeks, and ultimately even his form has dipped and he is being relied upon way too heavily by Spurs in their attacks. So yeah, I think that's a good set of transfers. I don't really have too many complaints about that. Your starting 11 also looks solid for now. So ultimately, I do agree with your transfer plans. So getting Saka and Enzo is something I discussed in my team selection and wildcard videos. And I do like Sarr in the long term. The same goes for Mateta, but I still think Sarr's my favourite way of covering Palace offensively. And if I were to go for a front three, it's probably going to be something like Haaland, Voltemada, and then someone like Joao Pedro to complete that forward line. I still like Victor Gyökeres, which I said before his brace against Atletico Madrid. We'll see if he can do that in the Premier League this weekend. But yeah, ultimately good transfer plans. I would buy those players you're looking at, but in terms of Palace options, I'd probably recommend holding out until Game Week 10. FPL Kevy says, hello buddy, could be the last chance for Bowen tonight for me, depending on how West Ham play. Have Rodon too, so hoping it goes well one way or another. Yes, it would be a bit of bad luck if both of them were to blank. I wouldn't rule it out with the way Leeds and West Ham are playing. I think West Ham are absolutely diabolical at the moment, but yeah, I think Leeds would fancy themselves for a result, but Bowen can still score in that sort of scenario. FPL Kevy says, also see Gabriel's a doubt now, which means bullet header incoming. I still think he'll start. You're going to see my predicted lineups very soon. I didn't make a video this time round for the first time this season in terms of predicted lineups, but I still got out the main content for you alongside UCL Fantasy. There was a double upload yesterday for FPL, and on Monday, of course, it was a triple Champions League special, but I think Gabriel will start against Crystal Palace, although there is obviously a doubt surrounding him now. Baraf says, start 1, Tarkowski, Caicedo, Foden. I'm playing Timber and Gabriel. Yeah, interesting one, actually. Tarkowski's good for DEFCON, but his ceiling will be the lowest of those players, in my opinion. I mean, if Spurs struggle to score again, they have been very poor in recent matches and very defensive, then yeah, Tarkowski with a goal, DEFCON and clean sheet. From that perspective, his ceiling is massive, but I personally think Spurs will score, and I'm looking at the other options. Caicedo's got a few bullet goals in him this season, or fantastic strikes from outside the box. I still think Foden for me out of those three, but he is a sell, and I talked about this in the last couple of transfer tips videos. Yeah, playing Timber and Gabriel's fine, but just bear in mind that Gabriel is a possible absentee on Sunday, and if that's the case, just make sure you've got the defensive depth necessary to cover for him. I don't really have it personally, at least for this week, but by buying one of Burn or Senesi, I can then bench Lacroix and have him ready to come on for Gabriel if needed. So a big shout out to Ahmed for gifting 5 memberships already. So to the likes of Majan, Real Life Demon, Let's Talk Vinyl, Sidant, and WikiDo. Enjoy the memberships for an entire month. That means early access to my videos, prior to comments, which will be very, very useful in streams like today, but particularly for UCL Fantasy if you play that as well. So yeah, big up there to Ahmed, as Mano says as well. Will you keep Foden for one more week or move him to Mbumo? I would probably sell him, to be fair. He can do well against Aston Villa. I also said this about Reinders. It wouldn't surprise me if he hauled on my bench, but I still think they're not worth the money, especially in the case of Foden, and you have alternatives at a similar price point, like Bruno Fernandes, also Anthony Gordon, although I'm less keen on him compared to the other midfielders I discuss, mainly Ismail Assar in the long term, Enzo Fernandez for Game Week 9 and beyond, and a few others like Ndai, which were all covered in my best wildcard video yesterday. Also, big up to Stefang17 for the super chat. Hola Dylan. Crack, thank you very much. And by the way, it's not crack, and okay, let's not even talk about drugs, but yeah. Necesito vender a Richarlison. Es una locura pensar en que Joao Pedro o quizás Guiu y luego dejarlo como en espacio muerto en la banca. No, no es una locura. Yo creo que Mark Guiu va a empezar como delantero mañana y Joao Pedro será el mediocampista ofensivo, y creo que eso es mejor para él. Joao Pedro anota más goles y también es más efectivo en un partido cuando tiene un delantero fijo como Delap o, en este caso, Mark Guiu, donde pueden combinar contra Sunderland. Así que no es una mala idea, pero como dije muchas veces con los delanteros, prefiero tener opciones fijos como Haaland, obviamente, Voltemada, Bowen, que también no están muy bien en este momento, pero West Ham es una mierda, lamentablemente. Victor Gyökeres para mí es una buena opción, pero quizás un poquito caro. Y después Jean-Philippe Mateta es muy sólido para su precio y las estadísticas son bárbaras, tío, la verdad. Y en este momento creo que Mateta hubiera anotado más goles con las chances que tuvo en esta temporada. Y hay otros delanteros también como Joao Pedro con los partidos de Chelsea hasta la jornada 13. Así que no es una locura en pensar en estos jugadores, pero creo que Joao Pedro es mejor que Marguillo a largo plazo. Isak, hold or sell? I think he's more of a sell than a hold. His injury doesn't seem too serious. There's a possibility he's back for game week 9, but I still think Ekitike will start, and with that situation, I'd rather avoid it completely. If one of them is definitively out in the long term, then you can definitely go for the other one, but until that's the case, I would completely avoid that situation. Good afternoon, Pieta. Good to see you as always. Cylindra says, hey Dylan, which one to start between Sarr, Richard, Xhaka? Well, the one with the highest ceiling, or the one who's most likely to score, is Ismaila Sarr still, despite facing Arsenal. Xhaka can get you DEFCON, to be fair, so you're probably looking at 3 to 4 points. And I think Richards will probably concede, but he can get DEFCON as well. Probably less likely than Jack in that regard. So it's a tough one, but I'd probably go for Ismaila Sarr in this scenario. For my family team, which two to start between Dewsbury Hall, Mukiele, Borro? Difficult one, but it's probably going to be Mukiele on the bench. It does mean a direct clash between Dewsbury Hall and Borro, but it's still possible for both of them to get a return at the same time, albeit unlikely. And yeah, with Mukiele, I just don't see Sunderland keeping a clean sheet. I don't think Mukiele will score or assist, so you're probably looking at DEFCON only, whilst Dewsbury Hall and Borro can take set pieces, get assists for their teams. So I think that's the way I'd go, despite the clash. And with 2 free transfers, is it worth using one to sell Konsa or Borro to Gabriel Byrne and just bench the other defender and start Dewsbury Hall? Yes, I'd rather sell Konsa. I've got a similar situation to you, but it's a bit awkward buying Gabriel right now. I think he'll start on Sunday, but I couldn't guarantee it. Yeah, I think Guiu will start for Chelsea tomorrow. It's not absolutely certain because Chelsea could also play Joao Pedro up front and then have Buenanote as the attacking midfielder. They can also play Esteval in that position just behind Joao Pedro, or even Pedro Neto as a striker. So they've got a few options despite all their injuries, and Delap will be back soon. But I believe Mark Guiu will start after scoring against Ajax in that 5-1 win a couple of days ago. My bench is Dubravka, Richards, Mukiele, Guiu. Which way should I order my bench just in case? I'd have Guiu first on the bench. Probably Mukiele second and Richards third. Should I sell Kudus, and for who? At a similar price point, I'd say Enzo Fernandez in Dai and also Ismaila Sarr long term, but if you're buying one this week, it's going to be Enzo Fernandez. Yeah, Easy, I remember you saying that 9 is your lucky number, so Game Week 9 wildcard is active for you. All the best. Yeah, I'm not so sure about that, Easy. You're the first one to remind me when I make a transfer. It's probably going to go tits up, but yeah, I don't know your squad, but I'd highly encourage you to check out my Wildcard podcast if you haven't done so already. It was published yesterday, and you can use that for some ideas in terms of the best players in each position. Yo, Dylan, start 2, Donnarumma, Dubravka, Elliot Anderson, Reinders, Van der Ven. Okay, so I would go for Dubravka actually this week, even though City have been solid with Donnarumma in goal. And from those players, so only one of those 3 starting, right? I'd personally go for Reinders out of the 3. Cyril Footy says, hey Dylan, need a 4.4 million or less defender. Currently looking at Van Heck or Diouf. Well, Diouf was obviously benched in Game Week 8, which is quite surprising, and West Ham made wholesale changes and played terribly against Brentford on Monday night. But yeah, Van Heck could be underrated, to be fair, and Brighton have some decent fixtures on paper, but oddly enough, they do better against the better teams in the country, so they are a bit difficult to predict from that perspective. Ultimately, I've said this before, if you're looking for that sort of cheap defender, I'd stick with one of Mukiele. Aldereti's going to miss out this weekend, by the way, for those that have him, and I'll be discussed soon. But yeah, one of Mukiele, Goodmanson or Rodon. And then the rest would be more than 4.4 million. So that would include a Munoz, Gabriel, and of course, we'll see if he plays in Game Week 9. You've got Chalobah, Dan Burn, Senesi. All these defenders were covered in my recent wildcard videos. But yeah, that price and below, I just stick with a very cheap option, to be fair. If you had to pick from the 2 you said, I think I'd probably go for Van Heck, but I'm not a big fan of Brighton assets in general. Thank you to Ahmad for the super chat. My FPL luck just ran out. Tosin, Dango, Alderete on the bench. Shot myself in the foot with the early Tosin transfer. I really don't want another -4 this week. Would you transfer Tosin to cover the Gabriel injury or leave it? Thank you very much for the super chat, mate. Very generous of you. Okay, you are in a difficult situation. I wouldn't rule out Tosin starting this weekend. I did see 1 or 2 predicted lineups with Tosin starting, but I personally think it'll be Achimpong alongside Chalobah. And despite the fact that it would be a -4 hit, I still think it would be a worthwhile transfer in the long term. So in my situation, I got 2 free transfers, and even before the Gabriel injury or doubt going into Game Week 9, I still had this sensation that I need to upgrade my defense, especially if I want to bench boost in Game Week 10. So I was already quite keen on it. So even for a -4 hit, I'd probably go for it, to be honest, even though it's not great for Game Week 9. Well, Gabriel just felt something against Atletico Madrid. He was subbed off early. I think a lot of people felt at the time, oh, Arteta's just using his squad well, which he has been doing this season, and he was taking Gabriel off early because the game was already won, but that's because he had a little problem, it seems. But I think Gabriel will start. I couldn't guarantee it, and ultimately one of Mosquera or Hincapié could do a good job in his absence, or don't even discount the possibility of Calafiori playing as a centre-back, which he did in pre-season, and then Lewis Skelly as the left-back. That's another possibility for Arsenal if Gabriel does miss out. What's your mini version of Fermin Lopez in FPL? I couldn't tell you, mate. And it definitely helped with Fermin Lopez, the fact that we saw the Barca lineup early, which is why I always encourage people to kind of wait in those UCL Fantasy deadline streams in terms of seeing those early lineups potentially and then locking in their transfers if they can. But yeah, with FPL, it's a bit more difficult to find that. Do I have any confidence of any player scoring a hat-trick this week? No, but I'm not ruling it out. I just don't know which one it's going to be. And ultimately, with Fermin Lopez, I just thought he'd get a goal or two. I think a hat-trick was still a big surprise for me. Gavardio, keep or sell. He got the odd benching against Everton. Yeah, his minutes could definitely be a big problem. I don't think he can be trusted long-term. And we saw this in the Club World Cup, actually, when Gavardio was quite popular at the beginning of the tournament. So, Gavardio can be decent for DEFCON. I still think he's a sell, though, because from Game Week 10 onwards, I think Munoz would particularly stand out, or any Palace defender. You've also got Gabriel long-term, who for me is the best Arsenal option, and also the best defender in the game. And even another possibility is to downgrade Gavardio to a Dan Burn or Senesi, and then having extra funds to upgrade other areas. So I think Gavardio's more of a sell. You also look at Man City's upcoming games, and despite their solid defence, they can keep 1 or 2 clean sheets. You couldn't bank on it, so yes, he's more of a sell for me. Yeah, Guiu could go down in price. That's a possibility, but maybe with the transfer activity happening in the next hour or so, that will be prevented, at least for another few days. Welcome, Mati Maka 74. Bonjour to you as well. Thank you as well, Ahmed, once again. You're very welcome, fam. Dylan's the man, best fantasy content out there and hardest working streamer on YouTube. And you're in luck if you play UCL Fantasy too. Thank you very much. And yeah, UCL Fantasy was a blast. Over 100 points yet again in back-to-back weeks. So since activating the wildcard, I think I went from around 500,000 in rank to 8k. So a very big rank rise, but still a lot of work to do. And I still made a few wasteful transfers like Malo Gusto, who was on my bench anyway. But yeah, in UCL Fantasy, it's going well. In FPL, progress is being made, but still not where we want to be. But by watching my videos, you'll bounce ideas off, and you'll have everything you need for FPL and UCL Fantasy in terms of news and also opinions. Thank you as well, Kuka2. All the best of luck. Hi, Dylan, Ekatike or Thiago. I would favour Ekatike from the 2 for Game Week 9 only. Longer term, though, I did discuss Igor Thiago as an option in my wildcard podcast because he's significantly cheaper, there is no risk of rotation, and he's on penalties alongside Kevin Schade. Is triple Leeds Rodon stack DCL acceptable this week? Against West Ham, I think any triple up is probably acceptable, even for Leeds United, but it's not something I'd recommend long term. Even with Dominic Calvert-Lewin, I understood why people went there. Budget forward, 8th attacker, and he will get the odd return, but he's just not worth it for me. Yeah, for Game Week 9, I think it could definitely be a case, or you can make a strong argument for it, but who are you benching for these 3 Leeds players? That's what I'd want to know, and ultimately I would trim that down as soon as possible. Drunk Baller says, finally bought in Ndai after suffering weeks of Xavi Simons. Look, Ndai could disappoint this week against Spurs, but he's got so many avenues to points. I would just like to see more assists from him, but the creativity is certainly there, with 13 key passes and 3 big chances created this season, but his teammates are quite poor finishers. We saw Beto against Man City a few days ago, for example. Ahmed says, hi Dylan, so I had 4 free transfers, used 3 getting Salah, Dewsbury Hall and Foster out for Enzo, Saka and Mateta early instead of Game Week 10, leaves 1 free transfer for now. I have lost faith in Haaland Salah draft, it's time to jump off it. Yeah, look, I've been telling people for Crystal Palace assets like Mateta, the best time to buy on paper is Game Week 10, but Mateta did score a few times against Arsenal last season at the Emirates in the Carabao Cup and Premier League as a substitute. So, yeah, it's not a bad set of transfers. I think long-term they will pay off, And Enzo Fernandez this week looks very encouraging. He would be a top 10 captaincy option alongside Bukayo Saka. So I'm on board with that. And I do agree about Salah. I think he'll start tomorrow, by the way, despite the benching against Frankfurt. But yeah, he's not worth the money. It's as simple as that. Yeah, I mentioned this at the beginning of the stream there, Alex. What the... Yeah, 1 second, by the way. Yeah, apologies for that, by the way. I'm not sure what happened. I think I had some technical difficulties. Yeah, so at the beginning of the stream, I mentioned about Semenyo. I would have been more keen on captaining him if Nottingham Forest still had Ange Postecoglou. That's no longer the case. So, yeah, with Semenyo, he is still second in my captaincy list, but he could arguably be lower. There is no standout for the armband this week. Even Erling Haaland, who's probably number one by default. But, yeah, I think Forest will be a bit more solid defensively. Hi, Dylan. Should I bench Joao Pedro, Gyökeres, or Sarr? Oh, it would be Sarr from those three. He's a good player, by the way. He could score against Arsenal, but I think the others are more likely to get a return. Welcome, Alan Zared. Hi, Dylan. Hope you're well, mate. Shall I bench Reinders for Van der Ven or Goodmanson? So, out of the two defenders, I prefer Goodmanson, but I still believe Reinders, and I know he's on my bench, so this might seem contradictory or hypocritical, but I have said this before in the last couple of weeks that it would not surprise me to see Reinders get more attacking returns or step up his FPL output in the more difficult games coming up, like Aston Villa away. But I think from those three players, I'd still start Reinders, and Goodmanson would be first on the bench. Dylan, best Salah replacement, probably Bukayo Saka. You still save 4 million in the process and can use that for other areas. Van der Ven or Goodmanson first on the bench if Gabriel's out. Goodmanson. There are some super chats in the building. I'll go for them first, then the channel member questions. AM says, hi from Qatar. Greetings to you. Saliba or Timber? I prefer Jurriën Timber, even though Saliba will probably start more games in the Premier League this season, assuming both of them stay fit, because I think Ben White is a bigger risk to Timber's minutes than any Arsenal centre-back like Mosquera would be to Saliba's. But it's a good question. The reason why I'd pick the Dutchman is because he's getting more attacking returns this season, and his overall play, especially going forward, has improved from the previous campaign, and he's probably the best right back in the Premier League right now. So you've got a bit of assist threat there, a few goals. It's going to be more common to get one from Timber than Saliba, in my opinion. So yeah, I've said this before. Gabriel's my favourite way of covering Arsenal defensively. Raya would be second, Timber third, and then probably Saliba in fourth. But if Calafiori can stay fit, and I know he was benched in 2 Champions League games now, but I still think he's first choice in the Prem over Lewis Skelly. I think Calafiori is arguably better than Saliba right now, but of course there are some concerns about his injury record. Ross Wheeler says Van der Ven, Foden, Reinders, Gyökeres to Timber, Saka, Enzo, Krupi for free. Okay, it's worth saying that I like all of the transfers, and Krupi Jr. is a nice 1-week punt. Ivanosen is out, so you would expect Krupi Jr. to start again after that brace against Crystal Palace, but I think that's a bit awkward in terms of price. If you have a lot of money in the bank after making those moves, you could go from Krupi Jr. to Igor Thiago when Brentford's fixtures get better, but apart from that, you're quite limited when it comes to that other forward. That's my issue with that sort of thing, but I do agree with the players you're selling. Even the timing of it, I know those players are all capable of scoring. My biggest concern, though, is Gyökeres. He scored a brace against Atletico. I think he's doing a big job for Arsenal in terms of the runs, drawing people away from Martinelli and Saka and all the wingers who play there for the Gunners. But I think the goals will come with these upcoming fixtures. And Crystal Palace, by the way, lost 1-0 at home against a team from Cyprus. And yeah, that was a big surprise there because Palace went quite strong. But ultimately, the only thing that pissed me off from the 4 transfers in total is getting Krupi Jr. for Gyökeres. I just think long-term that's not going to stick. But if you're comfortable with that 4.5 million forward, you're going to bench in most weeks and you've got the squad depth necessary, then fair enough. I do like the other 3 enough to say go for it, but that would be my only concern. Gyökeres to Krupi Jr. seems like a massive downgrade long-term. We do have another super chat. Let me go through that. Thank you very much to Ahmad once again. Truffer in for Tosin, playing Nottingham Forest on only 4.4 million. 4.6 is my max. So Truffer was really impressive for me in Gameweek 1 against Liverpool, and he had a few decent performances to start the season, but from an FPL perspective, I'd rather go for Diakite. I think he's a bit more likely to get DEFCON. Overall, though, Truffer does have more FPL points on the board, and he will get more attacking returns, so there isn't much between those two. Now, if I were to buy a Bournemouth defender, it's probably going to be Senesi, but as you said, you've only got 4.6 million to work with, so I think Truff's fine. Just bear in mind that over the next three, Bournemouth will play Man City and Aston Villa, both away from home. As good as Bournemouth are, a clean sheet is unlikely in both matches, and then afterwards you've got some promising fixtures like West Ham, but if you're comfortable and you're able to bench these Bournemouth defenders in game weeks 10 and 11, I'd say go for it, and Truffer is absolutely fine, to be fair. And also with Tosin, I said this earlier, I wouldn't rule out the possibility of him starting alongside Chalobah tomorrow, but I think it'll be Achimpong instead after his first goal for Chelsea against Nottingham Forest. Start Rodon or Gabriel. I'd start Gabriel, and he'll either start or not play at all, in my opinion. I don't think he'll be on the bench and, come on for a one-pointer. If that does happen, I apologise in advance, but that's just my opinion. I'd start Gabriel. Would you make Enzo to Reinders if you can start DCL instead? I'm guessing you're buying Enzo, right? You're not going to be selling him for Reinders at this point. Well, Calvert-Lewin is not a good FPL pick, but he's playing West Ham, so it's like a double-edged sword there. I'd probably just say buy Enzo. Even though Reinders isn't a bad option this week against Aston Villa, I've currently got him benched and I'm not happy about it. I wish I could start him, but yeah, I'd bring in Enzo Fernandez. I think long-term that's an upgrade, and in terms of the captaincy, he'd be in my top 10 as well. Reinders to Gakpo/Enzo or Mbeumo. Now, Gakpo, to be fair, has been in great form. He has scored or assisted in the last 5 games for club and country, and he's got me a few returns in the process, so he's in great form, but I'd rather go to Enzo Fernandez out of the 3. With Gabriel, I doubt my defenders on the bench are Anderson and Alderete both injured. Should I do a transfer, Dylan? Yes, Anderson could be out for a couple of weeks. Alderete will probably be back by game week 10 or 11, but Sunderland also have poor fixtures on the horizon, so my advice is to make a defender transfer, sell Joachim Anderson, and try to get to Dan Burn if possible. I've also considered Marcus Senesi as well, and I'll be showing you a lot of different graphics, team news, and comparisons very soon. Benabache says Fermin 20-pointer was an unexpected return this week in UCL Fantasy. Glad Rashford got involved with the goals as well. Yeah, UCL Fantasy went well, but the Wednesday was quite disappointing. I had, 94 points with, 3 big hitters left in Elise, Kane, and Mbappe because everyone returned from the Tuesday, and they did let me down a little bit. Even Kane, as my captain, only 1 goal. Elise blanked, and he got the ball recovery point removed, and Mbappe blanked for the first time this season in the Champions League after scoring in 11 consecutive games, so a bit disappointing. Yeah, man, I did cover this already, man. I would sell Foden personally. I don't think you have to go to Mbeumo now, but I just think Foden is a headache to get out of the way. I think Mbeumo long-term is a better option. But I did mention other midfielders already, like Saka, Bruno Fernandes, Enzo Fernandez, Sarr long-term, and Ndai. And all of these are covered in my Wildcard podcast. Hi Dylan, should I do Gator Chalobah, seeing as I'm planning to bench boost this week? Probably yes. I think Chalobah will start this weekend. He's the most nailed on Chelsea defender bar Mark Cucurella, but yeah, I just think long term, I'm not so sure because you'd probably want a Palace defender in a couple of weeks anyway, maybe even from Game Week 10. Goldenhead said, or Goldhead, back in the day, says, easy week for me, rolling free transfer. What order would you have this bench in? Mukiele, Longstaff, Richards. Probably the way you've got it, there is a case to put Longstaff first just because he's playing against West Ham, but his goal record isn't great. He is more of a box-to-box midfielder, a very industrious player in the midfield. He's not really going to get many goals or assists, but West Ham makes anything possible. I think Gabriel will start. I'll talk about this very soon. Am I crazy to bring in Pedro this week? I think Ignacio, definitely one of the Spanish viewers, asked the same question. I don't think you're crazy to bring in Joao Pedro now. I think the fixtures are certainly there to be targeted, and if anything, the reintroduction of a striker like Delap, and in this case I think Margui will start tomorrow, that's only going to benefit Joao Pedro, in my opinion. So yeah, I think Pedro is a good option. Been waiting to offload Watkins, and nobody else really stands out. Voltemada, obviously Haaland's the standout, but we all know about that. Most of us have him. I'd probably say Voltemada, Gyökeres, Mateta, Joao Pedro, and if you're buying one this week, I think Pedro might be the best one. Play Goodmanson or Paqueta. Paqueta has the highest ceiling, in my opinion. He's more likely to score. He's on penalties for West Ham as well. But I've gone for a 2-1 Leeds win in my prediction. So from that perspective, I'd probably go for Paqueta. I'm starting Dubravka over Sanchez. Yes, fine. I'm going to go for Sanchez personally. No, I wouldn't captain Paqueta. Try not to spam the chat, please, mate. There's a lot of people trying to have their questions answered. Yeah, Senesi's a good option, but I'm less keen on him with Sean Dyche taking the helm at Nottingham Forest. And you've also got Man City and Aston Villa over the next 3. So for those that are looking to bench boost in Game Week 10, Senesi's not a great option against Man City away. And that's why I think Dan Burn is more likely to get into my starting 11, actually. And I probably need it with that Gabriel injury. Thank you, by the way, to... I think it's... I can't remember your name from before. But AKPKRK, it seems like a lot of YouTube names are changing around now. Hey, Dylan. Dubravka, Gabriel, Senesi, Chalobah, Semenyo, Paqueta, Eze, Kudus, Haaland captain, Joao Pedro, Voltemada. On the bench, Raya, Sarr, Van Dijk, and Goodmanson. Yeah, very stacked team. And by the way, I believe your name is Anish. Correct me if I'm wrong. But all the YouTube changing names is kind of catching me off guard. Looks pretty decent overall. I agree with the starting 11. I would probably start Raya over Dubravka, but you do have Gabriel in there to cover the Arsenal defence if he starts, but that obviously could be a concern. To have Van Dijk as a 6 million defender coming on if necessary is definitely enough squad depth. You don't need to make any transfers at the moment, but a few players you might want to consider selling in the future include Kudus, Paqueta. I've said this before with Eze, and after the recent performances, I'm less keen on him, but yeah, with the Arsenal midfield, I think Saka's the one. Maybe take a punt on Rice at 6.5, but yeah, I think Eze's still a hold for the next couple until Arsenal's fixtures turn for the worse, but I think Kudus and Paqueta can be sold in the next couple of weeks, not necessarily this week, because I think their fixtures are still okay, and ultimately, you don't need to make a transfer in Game Week 9. Gakpo or Ndai? I think Ndai long term. Fenerbahce says, do you think it would be better to transfer out Anderson this week, Dylan? Yes. I'm planning to roll and make a double move in Game Week 10 to upgrade Anderson to Munoz. So it depends on your situation as well. If you've got decent coverage this week, then that's fine. You don't need to pull the trigger now. But ultimately, if you can make an upgrade this week from Anderson to, well, Dan Burn, for example, I mean, you're saying 4.6 in the bank, so that's not going to be possible. But if you can get to a defender you like, that could even be Truffert or Diakite, then that still looks pretty decent. But you are discussing a possibility of upgrading Anderson to Munoz in Game Week 10 as part of 2 free transfers. So if that's the case, I'd wait until Game Week 10. But the ideal situation is to do it now, if possible. Play Caicedo or Ndai. I'd play Ndai. Start one of Sarr, Mateta, Munoz. I'd go for Mateta. Good record against Arsenal, at least last season. No Alderete, no problem. Well, they're going to put Ballard in central defence alongside Mukiele. They've got Hume, and obviously Masuaku's another option to play at left back, but I think Renildo will come in straight away, back from that suspension, and Hume will play on the right-hand side. Yeah, Sudindra, I did answer your question earlier, mate, and from those 3 players, I said Sarr. Calafiori or James? I'd take a punt on James for the next couple of weeks. Gakpo or Pedro Neto? Gakpo. Voltemada or Mateta? Voltemada if you're buying this week. I'm selling Salah. Is it worth bench boost in case Gabriel doesn't play? Depends on your bench, mate. I'm not trying to be a twat, but I don't know your team, so it's impossible for me to say, yeah, play the bench boost or, you know, don't play it, because I don't know who's involved in that. Gakpo against Sarr long term. Ismaila Sarr. Yes, I'll do lineup predictions very soon. Got it. They're just my predictions. I've got a decent success rate of, I think, 88%, maybe 87%. You'll see it very soon. Bernas0612 says, hi Dylan, free transfers, all chips except wildcard. My team is Donnarumma, Senesi, Timber, Diouf, Bruno, Semenyo, Kudus, Caicedo, Gyökeres, Haaland, Joao Pedro, with Dubravka, Stack, Rodon, and Tarkowski on the bench. Should I bench boost? It's a decent one. I'd probably do it. I'd also encourage anyone who is, you know, still thinking about when to bench boost to use the website fpl.team, visualize future game weeks, and see how the fixtures look like for your players. And I think Game Week 9 or 10 is probably the best time to play the bench boost for those that haven't done so for the first half of the season. And in my situation, Game Week 10 looks the most likely. Andrew Lee says, hi Dylan, which 3 out of 4 would you start? From those 4 players, I'd probably bench an Arsenal one, actually. Difficult to separate Timber Calafiori. I think the Italian is more exciting to watch, and he's got a very unique role in that Arsenal team. He is not a centre-back playing at left-back, basically. He's drifting forward and he's got a great finish on him. But I'd probably start Timber. So Calafiori on the bench, which might age horribly. Relaxi Gamer says, I have Joachim Andersen, but free transfers. Andersen to Botman/Burn. I'd recommend Burn if you can. Reinders to Enzo Fernandez and Vicario Sanchez. Looks decent overall. My favourite goalkeepers long-term are Raya and Pope, but Sanchez would still be in that conversation in the top 5, so not a terrible pick, and probably the safest way of covering Chelsea defensively, with the exception of Cucurella at 6.1 million. But overall, the transfers look good, and you're getting rid of some big headaches like Joachim Andersen, so I think that's absolutely fine. Ahmed says, would you start Reinders over Caicedo? Already have Enzo, as I mentioned. Other attackers are Haaland, Joao Pedro, Mateta, Semenyo, Saka. That's an interesting one, actually. Caicedo is more likely to get DEFCON. He can also get a goal, but I still think that's going to dry up from now until the end of the season. But he did score against Ajax as well, so he is having a great start to this campaign. I'd go for Reinders, personally. That's the way I'd go about it, but Caicedo has the better fixture, so I wouldn't blame you if you went against my advice. Let's Talk Vinyl says, hi Dylan, thanks for another free month. You're the best, especially your Champions League coverage. Best of luck this week. Very much appreciated, mate. And yeah, you've had a few of these memberships, and it's nothing to do with me, I think. Sometimes I give memberships at the beginning of every month, but this time it was all thanks to Ahmed, and I do appreciate your comments there. Should I bench Gay for Estev? Yeah, I probably would this week. I have 5 free transfers. I'm not sure what I want to do with them, says Def the Kid. I want to get rid of Vicario, Romero, Foden, Reinders, and Gyökeres. Not sure who to get, though. Thoughts? You don't need to get rid of Gyökeres, in my opinion. He is a bit too expensive for what he's offering. I admit that, but I think the goals will come. With the others, I agree. They are all sellable. But with Vicario, you don't need to sell him right now. He also had a great performance against Monaco. He saved Spurs from embarrassment, in my opinion. But yeah, I'd sell one of those City midfielders, and probably Romero. Yeah, who is a doubt for this weekend as well. I think that is where your priority should lie. So arguably Foden and Romero out, and then making some upgrades accordingly. Another massive shout out, by the way, we got even more memberships in the building. So big up to Ahmad for gifting 10 of them. So to Mike Denker, to Lithwheel, Natasha, Michael Blackburn, and there are some familiar names in here actually. Joel, Jacob, Bad Panda, Avis, Matic, I am the man, I'll call you. I am the man 000, and also to Mahuri. Enjoy the membership for an entire month. You know the deal by now. Early access to my videos, prior to platter comments, and many other perks. They can all be found in the description. The Flox93 says, hello Dylan, what are your thoughts between Gakpo and Mbeumo? Well, Gakpo's in great form for club and country, but I still think he's not someone I'd want to buy in necessarily. I've got him. I don't see him as a priority sell, but I'm a bit conflicted about Gakpo. Yeah, you prefer Mbeumo, better fixtures, and United only play in the Premier League. That is true. And I did say a few days ago, if Gakpo started against Frankfurt, I'd be less keen on Gakpo in general, and I'd be open to selling him because he might get benched against Brentford. Whilst that's still a possibility, with Isak picking up that problem against Frankfurt, I think now we're going to see Gakpo on the left, Sal on the right, and Wirtz just behind Ekitike. Now, of course, Liverpool could still do something a little bit different, play McAllister and Jones with Szoboszlai a bit further forward, but I think Gakpo should start against Brentford tomorrow. And ultimately, until Gakpo is benched, I think he's a better option than Mbeumo, but not by much. Yeah, exactly that, Ahmed. Very generous from the super chatters and also those gifting the memberships as well. Ala Madrid says Raya, Saliba, Van Dijk, Burn, Anthony, Saka, Semenyo, Kudus, Haaland, Pedro, Voltemada. Okay, so you can go another week without making transfers, in my opinion, but I think Kudus in the long term is a sell. I think Jadon Anthony is fine for the price tag. He had a good start to the season, but not my favourite at 5.7 or below. You've got 2.5 in the bank, so that could be used to upgrade Jadon Anthony to a Brian Mbeumo as one example, or Enzo Fernandez. I think if you were to make a transfer this week, I would be very tempted to buy someone like Enzo Fernandez in the midfield, and I think Jadon Anthony could make way, or you just get rid of Kudus and maybe keep Anthony for that Wolves fixture. But I'd sell one of those two either in Gameweek 9 or 10, but you don't have to. Your team is in decent shape for the upcoming deadline. Yeah, no worries, Joel. A big up there to Ahmed and also to Ahmad for the super chats. Yeah, exactly. Big up to the memberships. We've got over 100 now. We're getting to 150, 200 in total with patrons included. So a big up to the community, and all your support is massively appreciated. We are closing in on 37,000 subscribers. I've answered hundreds of questions already, it seems. So be sure to drop a like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share this video. On the YouTube app, you can also click the hype button. We can see what the hype is about. And also in the description, there is my X, Instagram, and Blue Sky. You can find me by typing FPL Dylan or Dylan RCM. There's my Discord server, the FPL League, and Spotify. The same goes for FPL Challenge as well, which I'll get onto very shortly. But before I do, let's discuss the FDR, the fixture difficulty rating until Gameweek 14. Chelsea are top, with Arsenal, Crystal Palace, Wolves, and Bournemouth in the top 5. Man United are just behind that sort of upper echelon, and near the bottom there is Sunderland, Spurs, Man City, Leeds, and Brentford. With predicted points, Haaland is top once again with 7.5, second with 6.4. Saka, Fernandes, and Semenyo are in the top 5 with Gabriel, Cucurella, Amad Diallo, James, and Mbeumo in the top 10. With predicted price changes, Gakpo, Mbeumo, and Welbeck could rise tonight, according to the website livefpl.net. And not all of these transfer or price falls are going to happen, but they think that the likes of Yeremi Pino, Brennan Johnson, Hudson-Odoi, Konsa, Mark Guiu, Doherty, Hall, Neto, sorry, that's Hater, not Pedro Neto, Hinchelwood, Lascelles could all go down, and there are a few other names like Watkins, Mings, Bacecic, Jacob Murphy, Maddison, Humphreys, Beleba, and Barnes, but not many of them are of significant FPL interest. I put a poll out on my channel earlier about a defender to buy between Senesi and Burn, and most of you have voted for the Argentine. However, I will likely go for Dan Burn, which I talked about in my team selection podcast, especially with the plan to bench boost in Gameweek 10, where Burn will face West Ham away, as opposed to Bournemouth having a trip to Man City. So I think Dan Burn is the most likely transfer for me in Gameweek 9. I've got 2 available moves at my disposal after rolling in Gameweek 8. And with 3 consecutive green arrows and a lot of consistency, it's time to build upon that and reinforce my defensive line, which is in need of that, with Konsa facing Man City at home, Reinildo away to Chelsea, Gabriel's an injury doubt, and Lacroix is facing Arsenal away. Even Pedro Porro, my other defender, isn't exactly a hold in the long term. So I will have a look at the Premier League blog again and the press conferences to see if there are any other updates, because there are a lot of managers speaking over the course of the day, but I think they probably would have finished by now. They normally do finish by 4 to 5 p.m, but I'll keep you posted on any major updates. I think Gabriel is the biggest one from today, so I'll have you posted very shortly on that. But let me show you this quote about Mark Guiu. Maresca says that he wasn't training well enough and he had to have a chat with him. Since he trained well, he has been playing and he is ready to start. He adds it is too early to talk about him leaving again on loan in January, but all the signs point towards Mark Guiu starting against Sunderland tomorrow in the early kickoff. Let's now go to a stats comparison of Gyökeres and Jean-Philippe Mateta. Ultimately, if you got Gyökeres, I would not be selling him to Mateta this week, despite the fact that the Frenchman has more goals and better underlying stats so far this season. And before Gameweek 8, a lot of people were absolutely sick of Mateta. He was missing some big opportunities, but that hat-trick has changed the perception about him, and the same could happen with Gyökeres, who scored a brace against Atletico Madrid in a 4-0 win for the Gunners. But ultimately, if you look at all these stats, they're good for Gyökeres, but absolutely exceptional for Jean-Philippe Mateta. And if you've got the Frenchman, definitely don't sell him. I think he's a hold right now and a purchase from Gameweek 10 onwards. Let me now show you the best wildcard squad, and it still contains Gabriel, but he is yellow flagged now, and this is going to be the wildcard squad on screen. So Raya in goal, Senesi, Chalobah, Gabriel, and you could change that to a different Arsenal option like Timber, who is probably my next favourite in that defensive line. Saka, Indai, Semenyo, and Enzo Fernandez, who is no longer yellow flagged. Voltemada, Haaland, and Igor Thiago, despite the fact that Brentford are near the bottom of the FDR. And on the bench, there's Dubravka, Sarr, Burn, and Mukiele. But I think from Gameweek 10, there could be some significant changes, like Daniel Munoz entering the mix, and a few other changes here and there that could even include a Jean-Philippe Mateta instead of Igor Thiago. But I think 2 Palace attackers or Palace players is the sweet spot. I think 3 might be overkill. So you're looking at 1 or 2 Palace assets from Game Week 10 onwards, and ultimately buying them now is a big risk. If I were to buy Dan Burn, I would have this sort of setup on the bench boost in Game Week 10. So my goalkeepers aren't great. Sanchez away to Tottenham and Dubravka facing Arsenal. But I've got Reinders at home to Bournemouth, Lacroix facing Brentford, and Reinildo facing Everton at home, and a decent starting 11 overall. And I've got 2 free transfers to make things even better. So my current plan is to bench boost in Game Week 10. If I were to do it this week, I'm just not entirely sure about that. You look at the fixtures, they're quite poor in general. I think Reinders and Dubravka look good, but the other two, not so much. Let me know your thoughts in the live chat. Would you bench boost in Game Week 9 or in 10 in my situation? But I think Game Week 10 looks a little bit more enticing based on the fixtures. Let's now go to FPL Challenge, and I'll go back to this after the deadline has passed because our full focus will be on FPL for the next couple of hours. But Nick Pope is in goal for me against Fulham with Reece James, Salah, Bruno Fernandes, Haaland, and Jarrod Bowen. Salah's my captain because this week it is called Iconic. So players who have been at the club for 5+ seasons earn double points. 1 player per club with an unlimited budget. And ultimately, I could still just go for Erling Haaland captain, despite the fact he doesn't fill that quota just yet. When we get the Leeds and West Ham lineups, I'll be going through them as well very shortly. And there are different graphics to go through. And that includes the team selection, game week reviews, prices, and stuff like that. And I have updated them with the injury to Gabriel Magalhaes. So let this play out for a little bit. I'll get back to your questions very shortly, but I also want to discuss the top 10 captains, clean sheet odds, and a few other bits and bobs for Fantasy Premier League. So as you can see, I had a pretty solid week in Game Week 8. It was 82 points overall, and another green arrow. I captained Erling Haaland, and he did the business once again. Voltemar has been a brilliant signing for me, and despite some frustrations from Joao Pedro, I still think he's a hold up until Game Week 13. And Semenyo was a bit underwhelming against Forest, but you can forgive him with his sheer consistency over the course of the season. And by the way, I meant to say his underwhelming performance against Crystal Palace. He is facing Forest next. We'll see how he does. Ndai has been very decent for me in terms of consistency. Even when he doesn't score or assist, he's getting DEFCON, so I have no complaints about him whatsoever. And Cody Gakpo scored, and Bruno Fernandes got maximum bonus points with a winning assist in that 2-1 win for Man United. But I think my biggest weakness here, as you can see in this starting 11, is the defensive line. Both Lacroix and Borro blanked and delivered 1-pointers. I've basically been carried by Gabriel in this position. And the likes of Konsa on my bench got 2 points. Reinildo's been suspended for 3 matches. He's now available for Game Week 9. And despite Sanchez getting a clean sheet, he only got 5 points. And I picked the right goalkeeper in the end with Martin Dubravka. So ultimately, it has been looking very solid over the last couple of weeks. So with prices, Gabriel is 6.4 million, but is now yellow flagged, and Semenyo went up to 8.1 million very recently. And as I mentioned a few minutes ago with the website livefpl.net, Gakpo could rise in price tonight, so that could gain me a bit of team value as well. And I was considering selling Gakpo in the last couple of weeks, but I think by this stage, I'll probably keep him until Game Week 10 or 11 at the very least. So you're going to see my transfer plans in this section, and my biggest priority is reinforcing my defensive line. But Gakpo to Sarr looks good for Game Week 10, and Fernandes to Saka also. I don't think it's really a major upgrade for the upcoming deadline. But Konsa to one of Senesi or Dan Burn is the most likely, and most of you have voted for the Argentine in the poll I displayed earlier in this stream. So this is going to be my provisional team selection for Game Week 9. It's very likely I'll go for this final starting 11 with Sanchez in goal against Sunderland at home. Gabriel is an injury doubt. I think he'll start, and you'll see my predicted lineups in a couple of minutes' time. And Dan Burn looks very decent against Fulham at home, and also in the upcoming fixtures like West Ham away on a potential bench boost in Game Week 10. But Pedro Porro isn't looking great, and he does face Everton away and Chelsea at home over the next 2 game weeks. In the midfield, it's looking fine for now, but there is no Ismaila Sarr, Saka, or Enzo Fernandez for the time being. But Bruno Fernandes against Brighton is solid. I think Cody Gakpo against Brentford away is not the worst option in the world. And Antoine Semenyo against Forest is still decent, but probably less appealing than he would have been over a week ago. And Ndai up against Tottenham is still going to be quite appealing, in my opinion. And the front three is arguably the best you can build in the game. But of course, you've got Mateta, Gyökeres, and a few others to think about, like Jean-Philippe Mateta. Now, on the bench, I've got Dubravka away to Wolves, Rangers facing Aston Villa away, Lacroix up against Arsenal, which does put me off from a bench boost, and Reinildo against Chelsea. But I think he's going to start, and the captaincy will be on Erling Haaland, and Semenyo is the likely vice-captain, but ultimately that won't matter. With expected points, that was all covered in my team selection. As usual, Erling Haaland is top. He is at 7.5 now, I believe, with Fantasy Football Hub, which I showed you as well earlier in this stream, with the top 10 highest expected points for Gameweek 9. Let me now go to the Gameweek analysis, so showing you the scoreline predictions. I made one change from yesterday's wildcard video, and I've put a goal for Nottingham Forest. So I think that'll be a very close game between Bournemouth and Forest. I've gone for 2-1 there for the Cherries, but the other games include Leeds 2, West Ham 1, Chelsea 3, Sunderland 1, Newcastle 2, Fulham 0, Man United 1, Brighton 1, Brentford 0, Liverpool 1, Arsenal 2, Crystal Palace 1, Aston Villa 1, Man City 1, and of course the Cherries result I mentioned just now, Wolves 1, Burnley 0, and Everton 2, Tottenham Hotspur 2. So the highlight player this week is something I haven't showed you up until now, and maybe this is ownership bias, but I think Tottenham Hotspur are going to struggle up against this player. He is so exciting to watch. He played brilliantly against Man City, and Ndai has a great heat map. Even on the left-hand side, his more natural position, that's where we've seen some of his best football, but he's done a great job on the right this season for Everton, and his combination with Grealish is exceptional. The Grealish? Jack Grealish is now back from, not suspension, he was ineligible to play against Man City because they are his parent club, and that will be a massive boost for the Toffees, and I think Ndai will combine very well with him and cause Spurs all sorts of problems, who were very fortunate not to concede against Monaco, but Vicario deserves massive credit. It was a great goalkeeping performance, and he made multiple saves there to keep Spurs afloat. They're unbeaten in the Champions League. They've got the best record in away matches this season, but that could come to an end, and they might lose their first Premier League match away from home up against Everton at the Hill Dickinson Stadium, and Ndai would be the kind of most likely to make that happen. So with the clean sheet odds, Arsenal are top, and we're going to see this in many occasions this season. They've got a 50% chance of keeping one against Crystal Palace in that London derby. Chelsea are second, only narrowly behind the Gunners. Newcastle, Wolves, Bournemouth and Leeds are in the top 6, and all of them play at home. In last place is Sunderland, facing Chelsea away, with a 13% chance of keeping a clean sheet at Stamford Bridge. And last but not least, the top 10 captains. I'll probably show it one more time before the end of this stream. And Erling Haaland is top. Very, very boring, right? I would like to see other premiums step up, like Saka, Palmer when he's back available, Mohamed Salah, so we've got a lot of variation and we can change premiums and also captaincy on a regular basis. But at the moment, Haaland is the go-to, as Salah was at this stage last season. Semenyo is still second, but there is definitely a case to have him lower. The same goes for Mohamed Salah, who is facing Brentford away. Saka and Fernandes make up the top 5, with Voltemada, Enzo Fernandez, Joao Pedro, Ndai and Bowen in the top 10, but ultimately a West Ham asset being in the top 10 of any captaincy list seems bonkers, but Bowen is still a good option on paper, and I would be holding him if you've got Bowen in your FPL team. So before I go back to your questions, let's go for some lineups, because a few questions have actually been about who's going to start for Chelsea and yada yada yada. So with Arsenal, I've gotten 80 correct out of 88 so far this season. I believe Raya will start in goal with Timber, Saliba, Gabriel and Calafiori. If the Brazilian were to miss out, I think Mosquera is the most likely to come in, but there is also Hincapié. They can play Calafiori at centre-back with Skelly as the left-back. I wouldn't be surprised by any of those possibilities, with Zubimendi, Eze and Rice as the likely midfield partnership, Saka and Trossard on the wings, and Victor Gyökeres up front. With Aston Villa, I think Emi Martinez will start in goal with Cash, Konsa, Pau Torres and Luka Dean, Kamara and Onana in the midfield, Guesan and McGinn on the wings, and Morgan Rogers just behind Ollie Watkins. Next up is Bournemouth. I think it'll be Petrovic, Jimenez, Diakite, Senesi and Troffer, with Scott, Adams, Tavernier, Kluivert, Semenyo and Krupi Jr. up front. With Brentford, they normally play a back 5 against the biggest and best teams in the country, like Liverpool, Man City, and a few other examples there. I think Chelsea was another, but against the kind of rest of the league, they're going to play a back 4, it seems. And I'm a bit conflicted about this because they played so well against West Ham. Why change a winning formula? So it could be Dango Ouattara playing instead of Lewis Potter, and it looks like Hickey will be unavailable against Liverpool this weekend. But if they go for a back five, it will be Kelleher, Coyote, Van den Berg, Collins, Ajer, Lewis Potter, Yarmoliuk, Henderson and Damsgaard, with Igor Thiago and Kevin Schade up front. With Brighton, Matoma will be a massive miss if he misses out against Man United, but let's say, for example, the Japanese international isn't able to start. I think Brighton will go for Verbruggen, Vifa, Van Heck, Dunk, Kadioglu, Beleba, Ayari, Jorginho Rota, Gomez, Minter, and Danny Welbeck. But, of course, if Matoma's fit enough to start, that will be the case on the left-hand side. With Burnley, we have seen them play a back five for most of the season, but a 4-2-3-1 was prominent in the Championship last time out. With Dubravka in goal, Walker. Okay, so there is a... Let me change this, by the way. Yeah, Tuanzebe, not Ekdal. I'm not trying to send mixed messages or get it right one way or the other. So let me just change that quickly. Apologies there. So Tuanzebe, I think, will start alongside Esteve, with Hartman, Cullen, Florentino Luis, Bryn Larson, Ugachukwu, Jadon Anthony, and the doubtful Lau Foster up front. So I'll have this up and ready for you, because I will go through the predicted lineups another time, or at least have it play in the background whilst answering questions. But yeah, I think Tuanzebe will start there for Burnley. Let's now move on to the next team. But so far, so good in terms of the predictions and the scores I've gotten, which you can see in the top right-hand corner. Chelsea's maybe not so much, but I believe it'll be Robert Sanchez in goal, Reece James. Malagusta will not play because he is suspended after getting a red card against Nottingham Forest. Achimpong, Chalobah and Cucurella, with Enzo Fernandez, Caicedo, Esteval, Joao Pedro, Pedro Neto, and Mark Guiu. That is my predicted Chelsea 11. And with Crystal Palace, I think they'll go for this. It's their strongest team, and they're up against Arsenal on Sunday, with Dean Henderson in goal, Richards, Lacroix, and Mark Gay, Wharton and Kamada in the midfield, Munoz and Mitchell as the wing-backs, Sarr, Yeremy Pino, and Jean-Philippe Mateta off the back of a hat-trick against Bournemouth. With Everton, Jordan Pickford in goal, O'Brien, Tarkowski, Keane, Mikalenko, Idrissa Gana Gay and Ghana, Indai and Grealish on the wings, and Dewsbury Hall just behind Beto. That could easily be Barry against Tottenham. Next up is Fulham, with Leno in goal, Castagna, Diop, Cuenca, Ryan Sessegnon, Sandenberg and Kearney, Wilson and Iwobi on the wings, and King just behind Jimenez. But I did hear a rumour about Wilson being a bit of a doubt, so I'll have another look at that and maybe adjust this predicted lineup accordingly. We're now on to Leeds United, who play tonight against West Ham. I think Perry will go back in goal over Darlow. That's my personal take on it, but most predicted lineups I've seen will have Darlow starting, so we'll have a look at what happens there. Bogle, Rodon, Strauch and Goodmanson, with Ampadu, Longstaff and Stack, Aronson, Harrison and Calvert-Lewin. There is a chance for Okafor to actually start this game, but I think he'll be on the bench. The same goes for Matoma at Brighton. Liverpool, also another pretty good set of predictions there, with 79 out of 88, with Leeds as 83. And I think Mamardashvili will be in goal. Bradley, Kanate, Van Dijk and Kirkes. Szoboszlai and Jones in the midfield. Salah, Wirtz, Gakpo and Ekitike. Man City can always be a bit of a conundrum, but Donnarumma, Nunes, Ruben Diaz, Cavadio and O'Reilly is likely. Nico Gonzalez is doubtful, and I don't think Pep Guardiola has spoken to the doctors yet. So we're going to see now if he's going to play. A decision should be made by tomorrow. Bernardo Silva, Reinders, Foden and Doku just behind Erling Haaland. And you look at those upcoming fixtures, they aren't particularly great. And Man United are on the up, it seems, with some good underlying stats and performances. Lamins in goal, De Ligt, Maguire and Shaw, Amad Diallo and Dallo on the wings, or wing-backs I should say, Casemiro and Bruno Fernandes in the midfield, Imbumo, Mount and Matheus Cunha. We're approaching the end of the predicted lineups with Newcastle, Nick Pope, Trippier, Chow, Botman and Byrne. Tonali is still a doubt, but I think he'll start, and otherwise Jacob Ramsey is ready to cover. Bruno Guimaraes and Joelinton, with Elanga, Gordon and Nick Voltemada. With Nottingham Forest, Zinchenko was subbed off due to injury in the 2-0 win against Porto on Thursday, but it should be Sells in goal, Savona as the right back, and Williams shifted to the left-hand side, Milenkovic and Murillo in central defence, Anderson and Douglas Luiz as the holding midfielders, Ndoye and Hudson-Odoi on the wings, and Gibbs-White, who scored his first goal from the penalty spot against Porto, he'll be just behind Igor Jesus, who scored the other penalty in that very important victory. So Sunderland have a few concerns here. Diarra is out for the long term, and he should be available by November or December. And Alderete is out until the Everton game at the very least. So he's going to miss the Chelsea game, and Ballard will partner Mukiele in central defence. And Reinildo Mandava, who is back from suspension, should start at left-back, and Hume on the right. Roofs in goal is ever present, with Xhaka and Siddiqui in central midfield, Traore and Lefay on the wings, and Rigg just behind Isidore. With Tottenham Hotspur, Vicario, Borro, Danso, Van der Ven and Spence is the most likely, with João Paulinho and Bentancur in the midfield, Kudus and Odobert on the wings, and Xavi Simons just behind Richarlison. West Ham will likely have Areola tonight. To be honest, this is the Walker-Peters one. I'm probably going to change that to Wan-Bissaka, so I'll let you know very shortly. But Todibo, Kilman, Diouf, Soucek, Fernandez, Bowen, Paqueta, Somerville, and Callum Wilson. That's what I've gone for with the Hammers. But yeah, I think Wan-Bissaka over Walker-Peters is my only big concern. And I think Walker-Peters will drop to the bench, actually. The final team is going to be Wolves, with Johnston, Doughty, Santiago Bueno, Krejci, and Hugo Bueno, Andre, Manetzi, and Joao Gomez, Arias, Rodrigo Gomez, and Strand Larsen. And this is the team I've done the worst in, but the last couple of weeks have been better. I think I've gotten 10 correct in the last two, so hopefully I can make it 11 out of 11 for the first time this season with Wolves. But my other predictions have been pretty solid, and you'll see my final versions very soon, before the end of the deadline, of course. We've got just under an hour and a half left. Let's now go back to my FPL team. I'll be making a transfer very shortly, especially with that Gabriel injury. I think my defensive line needs reinforcement. I'll be going through member questions and also super chats first, and then going through the rest in order of submission. So be patient. Your questions will be answered. A big up to Ahmed, and also to Ahmad for gifting memberships earlier. You're massively appreciated. And also to the super chatters, patrons, and members. You're all very much appreciated, and you do a lot of work to boost us up in the algorithm. So the next super chat is by MMK. He says, "Hi Dylan, thoughts on the current 11? All chips available and one free transfer." Okay, so over the coming weeks, I would look to sell Van der Ven and possibly Tarkowski, actually. I think Nick Pope is absolutely fine. You've got that Newcastle coverage defensively. That's great. Gabriel's a doubt for Sunday, but even if he misses out, it shouldn't be a long-term issue. Cucurella, you're not going to sell now with Chelsea's fixtures, so I think he's a hold. You definitely have a lot of money invested in your defensive line, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. One thing I would consider, even though I like Gyökeres and I don't think he's a sell, you could do something like Gyökeres to Voltemada and then use those funds to buy Saka in the midfield and then make another upgrade in that defensive line, like Munoz in Gameweek 10 to replace one of Tarkowski or Van der Ven. I think that's what I'd look to do. So for Gameweek 9, nothing really screams out to me in terms of must transfers. And even Gyökeres, for example, you don't have to sell him, to be quite honest with you, but it seems like you've got a very imbalanced midfield in terms of funds. That can make it difficult to be flexible and change to the likes of Enzo Fernandez, Sarr, Ndai, and also Bukayo Saka. So you might need to reconsider taking some money out of that defensive line and also maybe Gyökeres up front, which isn't ideal, but that's something you could consider. But I think for Gameweek 9, I'd roll, and then going into Gameweek 10, start to make some of those moves I talked about, like Daniel Munoz in that defensive line, buy Voltemada up front potentially, or Mateta, and then getting Bukayo Saka in the midfield if you can. That could also be a Brian Mbeumo, Enzo Fernandez, all these midfielders I just discussed. Obviously, Mbeumo was a kind of a new one, talked about a lot in the live chat today, but I think those ideas would definitely help you in the long term. Ahmad says, did Nottingham Forest look good against Porto last night? Yes, they were solid defensively. I think they deserved the win. I only watched the highlights with that game, to be honest. I didn't see the whole game like I would have done with the Champions League early in the week, but I think Forest have solid foundations, and with Sean Dyche at the helm, these are very similar principles and style of play as we saw under Nuno last season. So I think they'll be more familiar with this. It's going to get them results. They're not obviously going to win most matches in the Premier League, and I don't expect them to finish in the top half necessarily, but I think Sean Dyche will keep them safe, that's for sure. And against Bournemouth, from thinking about a 2 or 3-0 for the Cherries, I'm now thinking it'll be cagier, like a 1-0, and my current prediction is actually 2-1 for Bournemouth. So, yeah, I think Forest will be competitive. It wouldn't surprise me if they got a result this weekend. And I'm less keen on buying Senesi or captaining Semenyo as a result of that managerial appointment. So thank you all very much for all the super chats and to all the members. Viet Kong says, thank you for the membership, Dylan. No worries, mate. I think the ones to thank are Ahmed and Ahmad. I want to get rid of Paqueta, who would be the best 6.5 million mid long term. Yeah, I think Caicedo would be up there. Granit Xhaka as well, especially if you're comfortable having that sort of cheap midfielder as your 8th attacker, essentially. Estevao is interesting, and he's definitely got a lot of talent, but yeah, I think at 6.5, I'd rather just go for Ismail Assar. Enzo Fernandez at 6.7 would be my preference, but he's probably going to be stretching a little bit for you. Yeah. I'd probably say Caicedo is pretty solid, but with Paqueta, I'd keep him against Leeds and probably sell in Gameweek 10. I think that's the way I'd go about it at the moment. Hey, Dylan, should I start Richards or Mukiele? I would start Mukiele out of the two. Not ideal, but a slightly better chance of a clean sheet. Goalkeeper debate, Dubravka against Pope. I'd start Pope this week. Last week I said Dubravka. This time I'm going to go the other way around. How likely is Jif to start? Well, I think he's going to start. He's in my predicted 11. And thank you, by the way, because you reminded me of the change I want to make in that West Ham team, which is Wan-Bissaka starting over Walker-Peters. So let me make that change. And then I'll have that ready for you. So you can see my final predicted 11s. Maybe that's going to end up being in vain, but yeah, I think Diouf will start. Okay, I'm just going to export this and save it, and then have it ready for the next time I show you these graphics. Okay, that should all be done. And I did go through a lot of graphics just now and team news, injury updates, etc. But yeah, that will be left for later in this stream. That's very weird. Okay. Alfie says Sarr or Rice. For Gameweek 9, I prefer Rice. Long term is Sarr all day long. So it just depends on how much you're looking at. If you have both of them, I'd start Rice. For those looking to buy one long term, it's going to be Ismail Assar. Good luck as well, LFC214. No, that was a mistake of mine writing the name Ekdal. What I meant to have was Tuanzebe starting. I think it will be Tuanzebe alongside Esteve. Good day, Dylan. Would you bench Kudus or Ndai? I prefer Ndai out of the two this week, and even long term. Hillary says, hi Dylan, which 2 out of 3 would you start this game week? Difficult one, but I would go for Reinders and probably Sarr, because I think Palace will score. And then you're looking at one of Sarr or Mateta as being the most likely to get that goal. Yeah, Gabriel picked up a problem against Atletico Madrid. That was covered earlier. That's the biggest piece of news, really. I'll have another look on Twitter and also at the press conferences to provide other updates. But I don't think there's anything... Yeah, no other kind of major news FPL-wise, in my opinion, but maybe I'm wrong about that. So let me have a breakdown. I'm going to use the website Fantasy Football Scout to see what they've kind of summarized from the press conferences. So, yeah, with Aston Villa, I don't think Emery has said anything yet. So Tielemans, Andre Garcia and Luka Dean miss Thursday's match with injury. So there is a chance Maatsen does start over the weekend. With Crystal Palace, Glasner says it looks like his squad have come through last night's defeat unscathed. Chadi Riyad remains a couple of weeks away from a return, while Chigdakore and Kofora are still out. With Burnley, Lau Foster's back in contention after returning to training this week, so that yellow flag should be removed. Jordan Bayer, Connor Roberts and Zeki Amdouni are on the longer-term injury list. So with Arsenal, Gabriel's yet to train after being substituted with an issue on Tuesday against Atletico Madrid. The likes of Odegaard, Madueke, Havertz and Jesus are still injured. Gustavo Nunes and also Maguma both featured for the under-21s on Tuesday. Aaron Hickey remains sidelined after international duty. Josh Da Silva has rejoined the club but won't make Game Week 9. Melambo is out. I think that's an ACL injury, so he could miss most of the season. With Thomas Frank, he said that Cristiano Romero has been running on the grass and the injury is not a longer one. Udogie is yet to train while Solanke is doing individual work. The injuries for Spurs include Davis, Madison, Kulusevski and Dragusin. With Everton, Jared Brantford is ruled out after undergoing surgery on a recurring injury. Nathan Patterson will be sidelined for a couple of weeks with a foot problem. Next up is Man United. Mason Mount and Harry Maguire are doubts for Game Week 9, each with a knock. Lisandro Martinez is the only player definitively ruled out. So we could see Euro and Sesko start, for example, and then Mount and Maguire on the bench. That's a possibility. Or maybe even missing out entirely. With Wolves, Bellegarde and Hwang Hee-chan have both returned to training this week. Strand Larsen will benefit from another week of work, according to Vitor Pereira. So Kusanov and Rodri remain silent for Pep Guardiola, and Nico Gonzalez is a doubt due to a problem with his foot. Yeah, we've had a lot of updates, of course, today. A lot of press conferences. With Brighton, Hörsler said that Mitoma, Veltman and Gruder are close to return, adding that one or two could be available. Diego Gomez is going to be ready, whilst Hinshelwood, Webster and March are out. With Newcastle, Sandro Tonali is touch and go for Game Week 9, with the Italian not feeling 100%. Vissa is still eyeing up a November return. Livramento and Hall remain out. Liam Delap returned to training yesterday and could feature in the Carabao Cup next week. No new injuries from Maresca's team. Malo Gusto is suspended. Badiashile, Colwill, Palmer and Isugu are definitively ruled out. And with Liverpool, Frimpong is out for Game Week 9 with a muscle injury that he picked up in the win over Eintracht Frankfurt. Alexander Isak and Gravenberch could feature though. Allison, Dans and Leone are unavailable. So I think that's pretty much it in terms of all the updates from Friday. I'll just have another quick look. Yeah, I think Bournemouth is the one I missed. Yeah, so Iriola confirmed that Ivanosen is definitely out this weekend, but is hoping to return for Game Week 10. David Brooks has trained for the last 2 days and could be available. Julio Soler is also back from international duty, while long-term absentee Enes Unal is now training fully and was given 45 minutes with the development squad in midweek. So there you go. Those are all the updates really that you need to know about. Thank you for the question, and to everyone else who has been waiting. Let's get the stream up to 200 likes. It'd be massively appreciated, and a big up to the community for all the support for the UCL Fantasy and FPL videos. Paqueta, Stack, Goodmanson, Lacroix, start one. Difficult, but I'd probably start one of Stack or Paqueta. I don't think either team keep a clean sheet, so from that perspective, you kind of back the more attacking players, so to speak, or the more advanced ones. Paqueta's on penalties. That's always a massive advantage. I think West Ham could lose tonight, but Paqueta could still get a goal contribution. So, yeah, difficult one, but I'd probably say Paqueta. I'd start Paqueta. So we've got 2 more super chats. Thank you very much to Marvel Plays. He says, thoughts on playing a back 5. Tarkovsky, Senesi, Gabriel Esteve, Virgil van Dijk, Caicedo, Semenyo, Joao Pedro, Gyökeres, Haaland, with Dubravka, Anthony, Kudus and Sarr on the bench. It's not a bad idea. I personally would rather start Kudus over Tarkovsky, even though Everton have a good chance of getting a result this weekend. But, yeah, Tarkovsky always offers DEFCON. You might even have a sub take place anyway. If Gabriel misses out on Sunday, then you've got Anthony coming in, and then it changes to a 4-4-2. But, yeah, ultimately, it's a good bench. You've got a lot of squad depth, and if you haven't bench boosted already, I'd really consider it for Game Week 9 or 10. Definitely look at the website fpl.team to visualize future game weeks and then see what you're most comfortable with when it comes to deploying the bench boost. But yeah, I do like your attack. I think the midfield is fine, but maybe you could invest a bit more money in there. And I think the likes of Kudus and Anthony are probably areas of improvement for the next couple of weeks. And I think from Game Week 10 onwards, you'd be looking at a Palace defender like Munoz, especially to replace someone like Tarkovsky, for example. But yeah, I would probably go for one of Anthony or Kudus to replace Esteve and Tarkovsky. So I think starting Senesi, Gabriel, and Virgil van Dijk is fine, and whilst your opinion or kind of different strategy of going for 5 defenders at the back is still viable, if it was me, I'd probably go for one of Antony or Kudus, maybe even both, to replace Tarkowski and Estev. Is it time to sell Salah? I have 4 free transfers. I think with the form, the 14.3 million price tag, which is not living up to, yes, I think Salah is a sell. There are some good fixtures from an attacking perspective, like Aston Villa at home. There's also Man City away in a couple of weeks' time, but then you've got a nice fixture swing around Game Week 13 for Liverpool. But yeah, I think Salah is a sell by this point, and if you don't have Erling Haaland and Salah's your cash cow, I would not hesitate about it twice. The kind of reasoning over the last couple of weeks, especially for the previous deadline, about keeping Salah was his great record against United, but also because I looked at Saka and he didn't even score assists, by the way. I didn't really have that confidence of Arsenal scoring a lot of goals against Fulham. I got that scoreline prediction correct of 1-0, but Saka still got 7 points because of DEFCON and the 2 bonus, but I still thought that Salah was probably a better option on paper for the next 2 or 3 game weeks. But then it's not just the question of Salah against Saka or the other midfielder you bring in, but also what you can do with the extra money. So yeah, I think Salah is a sell by this point. Yeah, as covered earlier, mate, I'd rather start Nick Pope over Dubravka, and I do like Newcastle defensively this week. Hi, Dylan. Feel like both will concede, but who to start out of Gay or Van Heck? Probably Van Heck. I think in terms of DEFCON, they're both quite similar. Van Heck has gotten them in half of the games this season, and the chances of a clean sheet are probably better for Brighton as opposed to Crystal Palace. I would argue that Gay is better for attacking contributions, but I would still go for Van Heck this week. Would you do Gyökeres to Ekitike? I have 0 Liverpool assets, but Saka and Calafiori. I would just keep Gyökeres for now. And with Ekitike, it's not a secure option because even with Isak, it's not a long-term concern. So I'm not so sure about that. Would you do Gyökeres to Saka this week? It depends on which forward you're bringing in for Gyökeres and which midfielder you're selling for Saka. That's what will determine it, but I would just keep what you have right now. Gyökeres scored a brace, in midweek, and Saka blanked against Atletico Madrid, so these things can change very quickly. Hey, I need a defender and a midfielder pairing for 11.7 million. I have Calafiori, Senesi, Rodon, and Gvardiol in defence. Eze, Semenyo, and Dye and Kudus in the midfield. What would you recommend? Something that stands out to me is like Enzo Fernandez in the midfield. So that would leave you with 5 million. Sorry, yeah, 5 million in the bank. Oh, yes, like 0.1 off from Burn. That would be perfect. If you get a Burn and Enzo, that's top. But yeah, what I'd probably say then is long term, I'd go for Sarr. Sarr and Burn looks really good. Maybe not for this week in the case of Sarr, but yeah, that is probably what I'd recommend for you, mate. Gvardiol sell, buy James, and which Arsenal player to sell? Yeah, look, Reece James is always a risk, so take that with a pinch of salt. In my transfer tips, I highlighted him as a purchase, but only up until Game Week 13. If I had to sell one of those players from Arsenal, it's Gyökeres, but I don't like it, personally. So yeah, just keep the Arsenal players you have for now. You can always buy Saka in a couple of weeks' time. I still think he's the best attacker for Arsenal, but Gyökeres will score plenty of goals for the Gunners, and there will be times where he's going to be great for the captaincy, but very difficult to predict when that's going to be. Good day. Start Mark Guiu. If you've got Mark Guiu, yeah, I'd probably start him. I believe he will get the nod for Chelsea tomorrow, but he's not someone I'd recommend purchasing for the long term. Who would you start, Truffert or Goodmanson? It'd still be Truffert for me. I am backing a 2-1 win for both Bournemouth and Leeds, but only a couple of days ago, especially before the dismissal of Ange Postecoglou, I was backing a Forest, or should I say a Bournemouth 2-0 win, possibly even 3-0. But yeah, it would be Truffert for me. Munoz, Senesi or Burn? It depends. For Game Week 9, I'd start Burn. I think if you're buying one long term and you can ignore the Arsenal fixture, I think Munoz is the most exciting one. But yeah, I'm probably going to buy Burn personally. Start Raya or Dubravka? I'd go for Raya. Jay, I covered that earlier, mate, and I did show you the predicted lineups only a few minutes ago. But yeah, for the first time this season, no predicted lineup. I did cover UCL Fantasy with a triple upload on Monday. I did the deadline stream on Tuesday. and I did some double recordings, like on Wednesday, for example, and I did a double upload on Thursday. So yeah, there just wasn't enough time for the predicted lineups, but I did have enough time, thankfully, to kind of build the 20 lineups for this stream. So that's why there wasn't a lineup video. Foden replacement, already have Sarr, Saka, and Semenyo. Yeah, I think Saka, if I'm buying one of those three. But ultimately, on a wild card or with transfers, I try to bring in all three of them if possible. But yeah, I think Saka. Hey Dylan, would you bench Mateta or Reinders? I'd go for Reinders in this case, but Mateta has incredible stats. That's the thing about him. And Palace create a lot of opportunities, and most of them fall to Jean-Philippe Mateta. But yeah, for this week, especially with your double Arsenal defence, I'd probably start Reinders. Would you do Rodgers and Wirtz to Neto, Enzo, and Mbeumo with 2 free transfers? Yes, I would. I would go to Enzo. He is my favourite Chelsea midfielder, with Caicedo being a close second. And yeah, Mbeumo is a decent option. Not my favourite. And before the Liverpool game, a lot of people were asking me about selling him. So things do change very, very quickly in FPL. But yeah, I would. Enzo or Sarr. If you're buying this week, Enzo Fernandez. Senesi, Timber, Burn, Borro, Chalobah, choose 3. So yeah, I would go for Timber, Burn, and Chalobah. Senesi would be on the bench, unfortunately. Who's better for the next 4 weeks, Caicedo or Reinders? Caicedo. Caicedo or Reinders to Enzo? If Reinders, Enzo takes the third Chelsea spot. No, that's fine, right? I'm guessing you got Joao Pedro. I think tripling up, even though Caicedo's not an attacker by trade, but to have 2 midfielders and then Joao Pedro is a little bit overkill. That would be my only concern, but yeah, I prefer Caicedo over Reinders, so that's my answer. I'd rather sell the Dutchman. Which one to transfer out, Reinders or Minter? Reinders. I don't actually mind him this week against Aston Villa, and he could actually improve with these more difficult games on paper, but yeah, he is still the more clear sell for me. I did cover 4.6 million defenders earlier, mate, so I think one of Truffle Diakite is fine, but I've said this multiple times in my wildcard videos as well. I'd just go for a cheap option like Goodmanson, Rodon, or Mukiele, and then the rest would be over 4.6, like Dan Burn, Senesi, Gabriel, Daniel Munoz, etc. Gabriel picked up a problem against Atletico, as covered earlier, mate. Don't you think it's possible for West Ham to keep a clean sheet, Dylan? Yes, possible. I'm not ruling it out definitively, but did you see them against Brentford? They conceded 15 shots in the first half. I know, once again, football's a very fast-moving environment. Things can change from one day to the other, but I saw nothing on Monday. If anything, what I saw from that game was that West Ham are in big trouble. They need massive surgery, and it's not going to take a few days. It's going to take weeks and months to improve that team. But yeah, I think Leeds have a good chance of scoring, especially if Okafor's back. I think if Okafor's not in the team, then yes, I think West Ham will fancy themselves to get a win, and the clean sheet might be their best kind of route to doing so. But I just don't see West Ham keeping clean sheets at this moment in time. Nuno could sort out the defence, but their problems rely even more on the weak midfield, in my opinion. Yes, I mean, ultimately it's a structural issue, and it's about the balance. And once they can get that right, and ultimately when you defend, it's a team effort. It's not just the defence, but yeah, I just don't see West Ham keeping a clean sheet tonight. You did well with Torres. I nearly went there. I'm guessing you mean Fermin Lopez, but yeah. UCL Fantasy went very well. Awali says, hello guys, like the stream and subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much. Hi Dylan, would you play Xavi Simons, Reinders, or -4 and play Enzo? I'd play Reinders. I don't mind the Enzo Fernandez route, even for a -4 hit, but I would just play Reinders in this case. Gavardio, Rodon, or Reinders to start? I'd start Reinders. Kudus for Gakpo? I'm not a big fan of Gakpo, despite his great form recently. And I think for those that have Gakpo, he's a hold, which I talked about a few weeks ago, by the way, but he's not a purchase for me. Hello, Dylan. Start Senesi or Eze? Eze. Who would you start, Doku or Giyu? I'd start Mark Giyu and take a punt on him. Start Vicario or Dubravka? Dubravka. Okay, there are a lot of questions coming in. I'll try to do my best to get through all of them, but a big up to SSED Rap, who gifted 5 memberships, and he did this a while ago, by the way, but to Sean Fong, Junaid, KK Bull, Steve Sedman, and Ahmed Ibada, enjoy the membership. for an entire month. It seems like I'm saying this every few minutes now, but it's all thanks to the great community and those gifting memberships to others. And that means you'll get early access to my videos, prior to comments, and many other perks, which can all be found in the description. Diouf or Mukiele? For this week, it'd be Diouf. I think he'll start, but I don't like West Ham defensively. Ahmed says, not sure if it's covered, Dylan. Saka is not pictured in training. Yeah, well, Gabriel is a doubt, which Arteta alluded to earlier. Saka would be a massive blow if he were to miss out, but yeah, I wouldn't look too much into him missing the kind of training pictures. It's not what you want to hear or see, but yeah, I actually wasn't aware of Saka not being in the training photos. So I'll have a look myself. If you do see any tweets, any bits of news, then drop a link in the live chat, but thank you for bringing it to my attention. That's definitely interesting to say the least. Start Tarkowski, Van de Ven, or Estev? I would start... I think I'd go for Estev, to be honest. Who to buy between Mateta, Joao Pedro, and Voltemada? It's an interesting one because timing is so important. If it was last week, I would have said Bowen, and obviously that ended up being horrible, but I think Voltemada looks very appealing this week against Fulham, and even in the long term, he's fixture-proof. Newcastle looking decent at home. They need to improve away, though. I'm going to say Joao Pedro, simply because of the fixtures, and I think a Mark Guiu or Delap starting up front, and it will be Guiu tomorrow, in my opinion, I think that's only going to benefit Joao Pedro. My plan was to go Joao Pedro, but now I want to go Voltemada, or elsewhere, you said, because of the stats. Yeah, that's true. The lack of shots is a big concern, but he could be on penalties as well in Palmer's absence. But look, if you don't want to go for Joao Pedro, then go for Nick Voltemada right now. Then that could change by game week 10 or 11, because by that stage, Palace have the best fixtures, and then Mateta with his great numbers, yeah, he's fixture-proof as well, and he can get a brace or hat-trick from time to time, but he is also a bit inconsistent. Before game week 8, I don't think many people were talking about buying Mateta, to be honest. ZA Champion says start Dubravka, in my opinion. That's fair enough. Over Raya, I personally wouldn't. Hi, Dylan. No worries about that, Wiley. Good to see you. Nice sticker there by SSCD Rap by Kevin De Bruyne. Let me talk. My voice is cracking, by the way, so I can't even imitate that. Forza Minter as a differential for the next game week. Well, Brighton have had United's number for the last couple of seasons, even at Old Trafford, and Minter's a quality player. He's improving every time I see him. I don't think his ceiling is particularly high, but he can give you 4 to 7 points on a more consistent basis this season anyway. But I don't mind him as a fifth midfielder, an eighth attacker. I'm not sure about starting him every single week, though, and with Brighton, I'd rather just avoid it. Foden replacement, already have Sarr, Saka and Semenyo. I'd just say Enzo Fernandez then. Saka for Foden this week will roll. Well, I'd buy Saka, but just bear in mind that, you know, it looks like he wasn't in the training pictures, so we'll have a look at that. Hi, Dylan. Appreciate the good work as usual. Which one would you start from, Reinders, Sarr, or Minter? This week, I'd probably go for Reinders, but yeah, Minter's not a bad one against United. He really isn't. I like Sarr a lot, and I'm not ruling out the possibility he does something against Arsenal, but he's more of a purchase long-term. I do like Minter against United, to be fair. I just don't think his ceiling is that high. If Reinders gets a goal, he's got a great chance of bonus points, and yeah, he's got a few different routes to points, even though he has been inconsistent. I'm benching him at the moment, Reinders. Very, very close. I'm going to say Reinders, but just about. I'm very tempted by Minter. Hi, Dylan, Kudus, Pedro Neto, and Dye start 2. Well, if you've got Pedro Neto, you start him against Sunderland, right? But yeah, Kudus on the bench, if I had to pick one. Should I do Kudus to Enzo this week? And which two to start from Munoz, Sarr, and Van de Ven? Yes, I'd buy Enzo this week, and I'd go for Sarr and Van de Ven with Munoz on the bench. Hello, Dylan. Would you bench boost with the new Gabriel injury? I think he's going to start, but there is a doubt in my mind now, of course, with this injury update by Arteta. Just depends on your bench, right, and your 15-man squad. But, of course, a yellow flag player is not going to be great, and you could be down to 14. Just bear that in mind. Was thinking Gyökeres to Obi and Reinders to Saka. Obi? Let me actually get this right. Who is Obi? I don't know if that's like a nickname for someone, but yeah, I need to recalibrate. Diouf and Reynolds to James and King or roll transfer? I'd roll the transfer, I think. I like James, but I don't think King's a great option long term, despite being 4.5. Yep, as covered before, Christian, I'd sell Reinders. NAH says, hi Dylan and chat. I am playing FPL Draft Mini League and I have Watkins and Evanescent in my team. Thiago, Welbeck, and Strand Larsen are all available. Who would you swap for one of them? Interesting. At this moment in time, it'd be Thiago and Welbeck. Just because Strand Larsen is playing with an Achilles problem, it would not surprise me to see him benched over the coming weeks, and Wolves are looking quite poor. So I think by virtue, I just go for Thiago and Welbeck, despite the tougher fixture on paper. Start Areola or Verbruggen? Not much in it. Maybe Areola. Thoughts on Saka and Gabriel news? I didn't see anything on Saka, to be honest. Gabriel, yes. I saw the update earlier. I relayed it and talked about it already, so not much more to add to that. Start Sarr or Reinders? I'd go for Reinders. Do you think it's wise to triple captain Haaland against Leeds in Gameweek 13? Yes. The biggest concern by that stage, though, is rotation or reduced minutes by Gameweek 13 to 15 with the congested fixture schedule, which is why I was so bullish on triple captaining Haaland back in Gameweek 6. Will Gvardiol play this week? It's not locked in, by the way, or it's not like a certainty, but I think Gvardiol will start. I prefer Enzo this week. Dog beat win. Minter or Ndai? I prefer Ndai. Kudus or Reinders? This week, I'd say Reinders. Dylan, Cunha for Bruno Fernandes or Mbumo -4 points worth it? Cunha looked good against Liverpool, and I think he'll start against Brighton. If anything, we could see Mount drop out now, and then Cunha in his natural left inside forward position, and Sesko up front, but I just keep Cunha. I don't think it's worth a hit. Krupi Jr. or Kudus? If you got Krupi Jr., I'd start him. Own both Reinders and Fulkrug. Do I take a -4 to sell both? No, just sell Fulkrug if you can. You might be limited in terms of funds, though. Hey Dylan, would you go for Caicedo and Keane in place of Van der Ven and Stack, or Enzo Mukiele for Van der Ven and Reinders? Difficult one to say. I don't think Keane is long-term, even though Branthwaite is still out after having that surgery, so Keane is safe for the time being, but that could obviously change by November or December. Difficult one to say. I do like Enzo, but Mukiele isn't someone you want to start in the coming weeks, apart from Everton maybe in Gameweek 10. So difficult, but I'm going to say Enzo Mukiele. Hey Dylan, I have Munoz and Sarr. Would you start them this week? Not over those players. I mean, maybe Munoz over Diouf, just because West Ham are terrible defensively and Munoz is a quality option, but I think that's fine. Yeah, maybe Munoz over Diouf. The rest I'd keep the same. But you got Burn, Gabriel, Diouf, Rodon. Okay, that's 4 defenders to be fair. Yeah, you could start Sarr over Diouf as well. I think that's what I do. Sarr over Diouf. Rodon, Munoz. Not really much in it, to be fair. I think Munoz is generally better, but yeah, good question. I would definitely start a Palace player, despite the Arsenal fixture, over Diouf or Rodon. Maybe even go for both of them in the starting 11. Play one of Gvardiol or Sarr. Ismaila Sarr. I want to get rid of Reinders. Who do you think is worth it? Depends on the price, mate. Enzo Fernandez, if you can get to him, would be my recommendation. There's also Ismaila Sarr long-term in Ndai. If you can't afford these players, I think one of Minter, Granit Xhaka or Caicedo would do the trick. Buy Saka for Foden this week or roll? Buy Saka. But just bear in mind, I don't know, there's a few murmurings around about him not being in training, so let me have a look and then we can finalise that. Mukiele or Lacroix? This week, Lacroix. You can also see it in my bench order. Kudus or Reinders, Timber or Diouf? Reinders and Timber. Start Dubravka or Maradashvili? Dubravka. Also sell Foden to who? To be fair, actually, wait, hold on. Let me cook. I did go for a 1-0 Liverpool win. That's a bit of a bold prediction, to be fair, considering their recent form. But yeah, simply by virtue of that prediction, I'm going to say Maradashvili, but there's not much in it, and I don't like that pick. I've never liked it. I said it from the beginning. So even if he does return this week, it's not really a long-term solution. Also, sell Foden to who? My other mids are Semenyo, Sarr, Gordon, Kudus, and forwards are Gyökeres, Joao Pedro, and Haaland. Well, ideally it'd be Saka if you can, but if not, there's also Enzo Fernandez. You could also consider Bruno, but I'm not sure what your budget is. One of those three midfielders looks fine. Adam is everywhere, says hi Dylan. Dubravka, Senesi, Gabriel, Gay, Rice, Gakpo, Foden, Semenyo, Volta, Messi, Haaland, and Joao Pedro. Am I cooked? No, you're not cooked. I'm not a big fan of Gay this week against Arsenal, but he's a good FPL pick in general. Foden is a sell. Now, could one of Foden or Reinders score or assist against Aston Villa? They definitely can, but yeah, I still think Foden is one to offload over the coming weeks. So, yeah, not cooked, but room for improvement. Indai or Sa? Indai. I'm wildcarding. Already have Semenyo, Salah, Saka, Minter, King, Voltamada, Pedro, Haaland. For this week, I prefer Indai. Long term is close, but Indai is on penalties, to be fair. And if you do go for Mateta up front in the end, which you haven't done at the moment, then yeah, I think that would probably push you towards going for Indai over Sa as well, to diversify your attack. You're welcome, Felipe. Aranya puts a super chat. He says, my 15, 2 free transfers, 2.6 million in the bank. Sanchez, Senesi, Esteve, Van de Ven, Saka, Bruno, Semenyo, Foden, Reinders, Haaland, Joao Pedro, Dubravka, Lacroix, Renildo, Guiu. Yeah, first, Gameweek 9 is fine. I don't think you need to make a transfer, even though there is room for improvement. But over the coming weeks, I would sell Van de Ven. I think Foden's a sell. You already got Saka in there, and you've got Bruno, but what I would consider is maybe Foden to Enzo Fernandez, and that gives you a lot of money in the bank, by the way. You've got Guiu last on your bench. I think he's going to start, though, actually, against Sunderland, so I'd be tempted to either have him first on the bench or start him. So there's a few things you could do here, to be fair, but yeah, I think Foden to Enzo Fernandez, maybe keep Reinders for now. You could bench him if you want, start Guiu. Completely up to you what you do there, but yeah. Then over the coming weeks, sell Van de Ven as an example, and you're in a good position for the long term. Hi Dylan, start Vicario or Dubravka? I just start Dubravka. And in terms of goalkeepers, my favourites are Raya and Pope. Sanchez would be top 5, but I'm not sure if he's in that conversation with those two. I think Gabriel will play, but there is a doubt about him. I couldn't guarantee it, and if there's any risk of injury, he's going to be rested because Arsenal have the best squad depth in the league. So, yeah, I think the Gunners, despite facing Crystal Palace, could still kind of cover for that. Forest defence, Defcon, especially Sean Dyche in charge. Yeah, that's a good point. I think Milenkovic and Murillo will be very solid when it comes to Defcon. I think Anderson could also be pretty good, but even under Ange, we saw Anderson do very well from that perspective. I don't think Tosin will start for Chelsea. This was covered earlier. You can rewind the stream to see all the graphics and also the predicted lineups. I'll go through that one more time before the deadline, but I don't think Tosin will start. I think it'll be Achimpong alongside Chalobah. Is Reinders to Enzo worthwhile? I think so. Who's the best cheap forward for 1 week punt on bench boost? Krupi, Guiu, or Foster? I'd say Krupi Jr. Best mid below 6 million? It's between Caicedo, Xhaka, and I think that's probably going to be one of those two, actually, for the long term. At this moment in time, it's Caicedo, but I do expect to drop off in his goals, which I've said for a week or two. Who should I replace Gyökeres with? I prefer keeping Gyökeres, but yeah, Voltamada, Mateta long term would be the best replacements alongside Joao Pedro. I think Jarrod Bowen is ranked a bit lower now on the list. Igor Thiago is fine, but I wouldn't be buying him for Gyökeres. I think that's a downgrade. You'd only do that to make upgrades elsewhere. But yeah, I'd say one of Mateta or Voltamada, with the German being my preference in Gameweek 9. Start Donnarumma or Dubravka this week. As covered earlier, it would be Dubravka, which is quite surprising, but I think Villa will score. Best captains for Gameweek 9. This was covered earlier as well, mate. I'll go through my graphics one more time very soon. But I think Haaland's the best one. Very boring, but that's the kind of landscape we live in FPL right now. No, it's not worth a -4 for that goalkeeper transfer, mate. I like Newcastle's fixtures, but no, I'd rather avoid hits for goalkeepers. Maybe buy Pope next week for free or do it in Gameweek 11, but not for a -4 this week. Bowen for Joao Pedro. I'd keep Bowen for another week, and then if he's still looking poor and West Ham are shambolic, then just sell him in Gameweek 10. Well, I don't think we need to really compare it too much. The stats, the underlying numbers are all down. Only 2 goals and 2 assists. He's missing some big opportunities, and it's a bit of a different role. I just don't think the chemistry is quite there with the attack. And I think last season, Salah benefited greatly from a Diaz and all these forwards with a high work rate. Diogo Jota is another one. Also Darwin Nunez when he played. So, yeah, I think it's just a completely different front line, and Salah isn't having the attacks built around him with that sort of free role he had under Arne Slot last season. Hi Dylan, I am on wildcard. Who should I keep in the team between Chalobah and Burn? Yeah, I'd go for Chalobah in this case, diversify your defensive line. I like Newcastle defensively, but the only team I'd double up on in that position is Arsenal, with Raya and Gabriel, or you could go for Timber as well. Yeah, Bruno Fernandes is fine. Who are your top 5 best mids for the next 5 game weeks? I'd refer back to my wildcard video from yesterday, mate, but essentially, I'd go for Saka, Enzo Fernandez. I'd probably go for Ndai. Bruno Fernandes would be up there, and Antoine Semenyo. That's a kind of rough top 5 for you. 2 of Reinders, Kudus and Paqueta. I would go for Reinders, and I'm going to say Paqueta this week. I don't know why. I've got a funny feeling about him. We'll see if that's a good one or a bad one. Sell Saka for Bruno? No. Like I said, I haven't seen the training stuff. I'll have a look myself and offer you my opinion, but I don't think Saka's a sell. Okay, so I'm going to put a poll out on my channel, and in the meantime, I will be looking at the updates on Saka. I have covered a lot of different things in this podcast. Clean sheet odds, top 10 captains, predicted lineups, answering hundreds of questions, benching dilemmas, you name it. Drop a like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and check all the links in the description for my Patreon and the championships, further access to my videos, amongst many other perks. My Discord server, the FPL League and Spotify can also be found in the description. Let's put this poll out of the best defender for me to buy. Of course, I'm not going to be getting Munoz this week personally, but the bench boost in Gameweek 10 is likely. So then Senesi, so that would be versus Forest at home and Man City away. And then Burn versus Fulham at home and West Ham away. So let me actually show you, using the website fpl.team, what I'm talking about here. So this is the wildcard squad. Of course, you can go from Gabriel to Timber if you're unsure about him playing and adjust a few things to your liking. But this was talked about in the wildcard podcast yesterday. With my team selection, by bringing in Burn now, I can start him against Fulham at home alongside Borro and Gabriel, and if needed, Lacroix will come off the bench against Arsenal away. And to be fair, actually, I wouldn't even mind having Reinildo ahead of Lacroix in the pecking order. That's something else I can think about myself, but ultimately I think Sunderland and Palace will concede, so it's not the end of the world there. So if I were to bench boost here, so it goes from 58.2 to 66.8. So not the best bench boost you'll ever see. Okay, and the alternative here is to then bench boost in Gameweek 10. Didn't mean to do that. Let's scroll down a little bit. Let's activate the bench boost for Gameweek 10. That also looks pretty decent. So 68.6 predicted points, and it actually goes up by more. So it does seem like the algorithm does favour a Gameweek 10 bench boost. The fixtures certainly look better on paper. But yeah, I think the big difference here is Burn away to West Ham compared to Senesi facing Man City away, which would be the case if I bought him in now. So I'm quite keen on buying Dan Burn at the moment, and we'll see what you lot think as well in the live chat. I did put a poll out on my channel as well. But yeah, I haven't seen the Saka training thing yet. Okay, yeah. I'm going to have a look at Arsenal's website, because they did post this earlier. Yeah, he's not in any of the training pictures. That is a big concern. I mean, I don't even have him in my team, but yeah, that could be a blow for the Gunners. Let's see this one. Yeah, he's nowhere to be seen. Yeah, okay. So that is true. Saka and Gabriel haven't been spotted in training. So I definitely need to make a defender's transfer. I'm kind of down to the bare bones in this position. So we'll get back to this dilemma very shortly, but I should be locking in a move. As I say in UCL Fantasy and FPL, I just don't recommend copying to anyone. Play the game the way you want to, but if you want to improve, you're not going to do that by copying somebody else. I've always said that. Let's go to the FPL one more time and whiz through these since I went through them earlier in this podcast. Sunderland, Spurs, Man City, Leeds and Brentford are in the bottom 5. Even Aston Villa and Newcastle are quite low down. Whilst Chelsea, Arsenal, Palace, Wolves, Bournemouth and United are all up there with the FDR. Even Liverpool are rising up the rankings. With predicted points, in Mbumo's 10th, we've got James, Ahmad, Cucurella and Gabriel just outside the top 5. Semenyo, Bruno Fernandes, Saka, Salah and Haaland are the best players, with Haaland being number 1 once again. With projected price changes, let me actually refresh this. So apparently Gakpo, Mbumo, Welbeck and Krupi Jr. could all rise in price. The same goes for Voltemada and Dan Burn, who could be bought now in my FPL team. With price falls, we could see Yeremi Bino, Johnson, Hwang Hee-chan, Watkins, Hudson-Odoi, Bellegarde, Jacob Murphy, Lascelles, Mark Guiu, bloody hell. Mudryk, Doughty, Hall, Bacecic, Barnes, Mings, Baleba, Norgard. Not all of these are going to happen, mate, but yeah, Endo, Hato. I would maybe ignore a few of these predicted price falls. There's also Heaton, Humphreys, and Maddison. Diarra's another one for Sunderland, but yeah. That's how things look like at the moment. With the poll I put out earlier, which is now the same as what you see in the live chat, Senesi did win this vote with 65%, but I'm quite keen on buying Dan Burn instead. And I compared the stats of Gyökeres and Mateta earlier in this stream, and Mateta pretty much pips him in every single number, except key passes to be fair, but I think Gyökeres still has solid numbers. He's a hold in most situations, but I do understand the temptation to sell him, but not for Bukayo Saka, especially if he doesn't even play this weekend, because there is a possibility of that, with both Saka and Gabriel not featuring in training, or at least not being in the training pictures, which is a big difference to be fair. I did show you FPL.team just a few minutes ago, so I'll skip that and go to FPL Challenge one more time, and then after the deadline has passed, this will be the main focus, of course, whilst we kind of chill. We hit our Super Chat goal, so this will be a longer stream, and I do like to have these kind of longer ones in general. You know that from UCL Fantasy and FPL this season. I've got Pope, James, Salah, Bruno Fernandes, Haaland, and Jarrod Bowen at the moment. And this week, any players who have featured or been at the club for 5+ seasons will get double points. You can only pick one player per club and have an unlimited budget to make this possible. I'll also cover the West Ham and Leeds lineups in an hour, if I'm still live by then, which I probably will be. So keep your eyes posted and peeled for that. And I'll just show you my team selection graphics. Your messages won't feature on screen, but I will be going through some of them now whilst this plays out. Yeah, it could be a trick, exactly that. Declan Rice. To be fair, Rice has had a few issues with his back in the last couple of weeks. He was subbed off against West Ham. You know, he asked to be subbed off, but yeah, I think those players should be fine, to be fair. If all of them were to miss out for Arsenal, despite their squad depth, I mean, that would be a lot of massive blows. Arteta playing games. It's a big game for Arsenal. I think Arteta's playing mind games. I think they'll all play. I mean, you saw my predicted lineups, which I'll go to in a couple of minutes' time, but it's a possibility, right? I think Gabriel's the biggest doubt, of course. He's yellow flagged. Nothing was mentioned with Saka or Rice earlier. Big Dan Burn, mate, that's for sure, says FPL Kevy. And the votes are quite comprehensive here. I think maybe the context of my situation does change things, but Dan Burn is the preference here. with 72% of the votes. Anish says play Virgil van Dijk or Kudus. I'd play Kudus, even though Van Dijk is good for DEFCON. He won player of the match against Frankfurt and scored a goal. So I don't mind Van Dijk, to be fair, and I am backing Liverpool to get a clean sheet against Brentford. I've gone for 1-0. But, yeah, good question. I just think Kudus is more likely to return in general. I mean, that's my kind of thinking at the moment. Very, very close one, though, and I could see myself changing my answer in a couple of minutes, to be fair, because it's very, very neck and neck. Bench order, Van der Ven, Tosin, King, what do you reckon? I think that's about right. I don't think Tosin will start, personally. The kind of hope, though, for those that have him is that he either starts or doesn't play at all. So you kind of avoid that one-pointer. But, yeah, I think that's fine. Pope or Petrovic? Pope. If you got both of them, yeah, that's arguably a bit too much. I mean, you've got Dubravka at 4 million, you can be your backup goalkeeper, but yeah, I prefer Nick Pope. If you build a wildcard team with non-Big Six players, what will it be? Well, yeah, it would look massively different, to be fair, but I'd have to have a look. Maybe after the stream is done, or after the deadline is done, I can have a look at that to play around with that sort of thing. Oh yeah, Obi's a 4.3 United forward. Yes, he used to play for Arsenal. I actually wasn't aware that he was even considered for some people in FPL to downgrade and get certain things done elsewhere, but that's just not worth it, in my opinion. Start Reinders or stack? Reinders. Romero to Burn or Chalobah? If you don't have Newcastle defensive coverage already, I'd go for Dan Burn. Achimpong worth taking on a wild card? I don't think so. You've also got, well, do you have Mukiele? If you've also got Mukiele, I think having 2 4 million defenders, there or thereabouts, is just not worth it. No, not for me. And I also think Achimpong will start tomorrow, but in the long term, I couldn't guarantee that. Let's now go through the scoreline predictions and other bits and bobs like the top 10 captains, which was asked about quite a lot. I've gone for Leeds 2, West Ham 1, Chelsea to win 3-1 against Sunderland, Newcastle 2, Fulham 0, Man United to draw against Brighton 1-1, Brentford 0, Liverpool 1, Arsenal 2, Crystal Palace 1, Aston Villa 1, Man City 1, Bournemouth 2, Nottingham Forest 1, Wolves 1, Burnley 0, Everton 2, and Tottenham Hotspur 2. The highlight player this week is Ndiaye, which you saw earlier, and despite Spurs having the best away record in the Premier League so far this season, they could suffer their first defeat in this competition on the road, and I think Everton are looking quite decent offensively, and Ndiaye is the main catalyst on the right flank. With the clean sheet odds, Arsenal are top once again with a 50% probability. They've only conceded 3 goals across 12 matches this season, their best ever record at this stage of the competition or at this stage of the year in their entire history, actually, which is incredible. Chelsea, Newcastle, Wolves, Bournemouth and Leeds are in the top 6, all of them with home matches, and Sunderland are last. So the top 10 captains, this is definitely a bit interchangeable. There are no clear standouts except Erling Haaland by default, but I've got Bowen in 10th against Leeds away. Ndiaye is in 9th, despite not having any double-digit returns so far this season. João Pedro and Enzo are just outside the top 5 alongside Nick Voltemada, with Bruno Fernandes, Saka, Salah, Semenyo and Haaland all up there. That is my rankings with the captaincy. Ultimately, if you've got Haaland, I just put the armband on him. It's just a shame. If Semenyo was facing an Ange Postecoglou, Nottingham Forest, then maybe I would have gone for it and done something a bit different, but that wouldn't be the case this week. So now let me show you the predicted lineups one more time. I'm just going to highlight the key bits and bobs. What the... Oh, I think I know what's happened now. That is very annoying. I wasn't even aware of that. Give me a second. Yeah. So that's changed it. Well, hopefully it's all the same, but either way, I did have... Let's see. Is this all the same then? Yeah, no, this is going to be different now. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, I did overwrite a file, so now it's different. It's not exactly what I was looking at, so I'm going to probably go back to this later on, but I do expect Gabriel to start. He is yellow flagged, but I obviously did realize that the graphics were overwritten. I'm going to go back to my team. I'm probably locking in a transfer very soon, so that's what I'm going to do now in the meantime. But yeah, I'm going to see if I can do something quickly to transfer the file to get that done. So yeah, just give me a second whilst I get that sorted. I'll probably leave that for, obviously, after the deadline, so you can see my final predicted lineups. But obviously, the main focus now will be answering your questions, locking in our teams, and all that jazz. But with the lineups, you got to wait a little bit more for the final versions. It's pretty much going to be the same as what I showed you earlier, but I think, for example, Walker-Peters could be dropped for Wan-Bissaka as one prime example. And based on the press conferences today, there could also be a few other tweaks in other teams like Maguire and Mount making way for Man United. And we could see Euro and Sesko start against Brighton. So those are the kind of changes I wanted to make as well. So yeah, I think it's probably best to leave that for later on. So yeah, I'm going to do that. Okay, so that should work then. Yeah, that's annoying. Okay. So going back to your questions, thank you very much for all the support. Let's get the stream to 200 likes. It would be greatly appreciated. Let's now go to the transfers. So Konsa out for Burn. I think that's what I'll do. And then have 2 free transfers for Gameweek 9. So I think that is the play. Yeah, I think that's a trick, yeah. Kudus to Enzo for a -4. I'm just not sure it's worth it. And you also said in the previous super chat that it's between Kudus or Virgil van Dijk to start. I think even both of them could return in Gameweek 9. So taking a hit to bench one of them and sell the other. I like Enzo Fernandez as a pick, but I don't think I'd do it for a hit personally. But you got to back your gut on that one. I think even Van Dijk and Kudus is very close, but yeah, probably wait until you can do it for free. Do you prefer Mbeumo over Bruno if he takes penalties this game week? Well, Amrim did say recently that Bruno will be on penalties, so yeah, I'm not really considering that then. Like, in the future, could Mbeumo take penalties? It's a possibility, but I think the most likely scenario is that Bruno keeps them, unless he goes on a terrible streak and keeps on missing time after time again. But yeah, I think Bruno will keep those penalties, to be fair. And he is my preference in FPL. He got maximum bonus points over the weekend. He got the winning assist. He's got multiple avenues to points. He has been very frustrating this season, Bruno Fernandes, but I think once he gets into that sort of purple patch and gets that confidence, he's going to be one of the best midfielders at that price tag. So yeah, Bruno Fernandes for me. Why not Trippier over Burn? Because once Livramento is back in November to December, I think we'll see Livramento start and Trippier on the bench. And I also think that Trippier he won't start every single game in the Champions League and Premier League, even though he's looking good at the moment. His attacking threat is also not really there, like it was a few years ago, where he was one of the best defenders in FPL. Captain Haaland or Gakpo? Yeah, I'd just go for Haaland personally, but if you're a Liverpool fan or you're really bullish on Gakpo, he's in great form at the moment. 5 consecutive games for club and country where he scored or assisted, but so is Erling Haaland. Hi, bench boost of Gabriel and Doubt. Yeah, it's a decent bench, to be fair. I'd probably go for it, but just bear in mind that Gabriel could bring you down to 14. I think he's going to start, but I can't guarantee anything. Munoz or Diouf? I'd probably just go for Munoz, actually. Start Reinders or Minter? I was asked this earlier, and I was very conflicted about it, but probably Minter. I think Minter just about Reinders is very, very close there. Will Sean Dyche make an instant impact for Forest? Well, he did win in his first game 2-0 against Porto, who were unbeaten in 11 games. So he's already made an impact. I personally think he's going to make Forest competitive. In terms of FPL, I think the likes of Milenkovic and Murillo will be good for DEFCON again. It was quite surprising to see how poor they were in FPL this season so far, but I think they'll improve. I have Rodon, Stack, Gabriel, and Dubravka. Should I bench boost or should I wait? Well, the fixtures probably look better now. What I'd highly suggest to you is use the website fpl.team, visualize game week 10, 11, 12, and see if you like the bench boost in those game weeks. But I think the best thing to do is to get rid of the bench boost as soon as possible. I know Gabriel is a doubt. I think he's going to play. I can't guarantee it. I must stress that. But there's a possibility you go down to 14 players. If you're comfortable with that, or you think Gabriel's going to play, I'd play the bench boost. -4 Rangers to Enzo, not for me. Hi Dylan, would you do Tarkovsky to Keane to afford Rangers to Enzo? Thanks. If it's for free, then maybe. I'd probably say yes. But why Keane? You could still go to a different defender who's more secure long-term, right? I mean, there aren't many at that price and below. You could say Truffert or Diakite, one of those Leeds defenders. Not a big fan of Sunderland in terms of buying their defenders now, but as a fifth option, that's okay. I'd say yes. Chalobah in for Lacroix. Looks decent for this week, but Crystal Palace have a nice fixture swing in Game Week 10. Ultimately with Palace, I think Munoz and Richards are the standouts. Lacroix has been a bit disappointing. I think that's fair to say. I would go for it, but it's not like a massive upgrade in my opinion. Reinders or Enzo? Enzo. Enzo for Reinders and Burn / Munoz for Gavardio, or Guiu for Gyökeres, Saka for Reinders and Burn. I'll just go for the free transfers, to be honest. Yeah. I don't think it's worth selling Gyökeres to get Saka for a hit. There's not really a massive update on Isak. I did talk about this earlier. It's not a massive injury. So, I don't know what else you want to say. It was covered earlier. So yeah, all the updates I actually provided earlier from the press conferences from the Friday. But just to give you the specific quote on Isak, which was, I think, in the morning. It's one of the first press conferences that took place today. What the fuck is wrong with the website, man? So yeah, these are the injury updates from Liverpool. Arne Slot said Jeremy Frimpong is not in a good place. He won't play today, tomorrow, or next week. Hamstring injuries take a while. Alexander Isak is not too bad. He has a question mark for the weekend, so we will see where he is. And that is the same with Ryan Gravenberch. Alisson Becker is also not in the squad. Okay, so the next question. Start Dieu for Kudus. I'd go for Kudus. Roses Falling says, I will bench boost. All the best with that. I'll probably bench boost in 10. Timber or Burn? Timber. What do you think about this for the next week? Reinders and Bowen to Ndai and Mateta. Looks good. I like that. Calafiori and Gyökeres to Gabriel and Voltemada on a free. Well, Gabriel is an injury doubt. It makes no sense to be buying him in now. I think he'll play on Sunday, but just keep Calafiori. He's going to start against Palace. And then, yeah, you can buy Gabriel by Game Week 11 or 12, or even Game Week 10, to be fair. But, yeah, I just don't... I don't think you need to sell any of those players, Calafiori or Gyökeres. I like Voltemada, but I just probably keep what you have. I've got a feeling to captain Joao Pedro, then go for it. If you're confident, if you trust your gut feeling and it's resulted in points in the past, always back your gut. Start Mateta or Sarr? Well, Mateta has the greatest stats in that Palace team. He gets the bulk of the big chances, but yeah, I get that logic. Mateta also has missed big opportunities all season, even in that game against Bournemouth where he scored a hat-trick. He missed some gilt-edged opportunities. Last season, Mateta was the biggest threat to Arsenal, so I think Sarr scored in the home game, which Arsenal won 5-1, but in the Carabao Cup and the Premier League, Mateta scored in both matches. So, difficult one to say. Personally, with the rate of chances Mateta's getting, I'd probably favour him. Having said that, if you're feeling that Sarr's gonna, or he's got a better chance of returning, and you feel that Mateta will blank, then you've got to back your gut there and bench Mateta based on your opinion. But I just think Mateta's stats are too good. Best 4.8 million defender at Newcastle. Well, you're just looking at Botman, I guess, but I'd rather go for Dan Burn if you can. Do I bench Gabriel for Goodmanson? I wouldn't do that. Start Rodon, Mukiele, Sarr, or Xhaka. Difficult. Very difficult. I think Mukiele would be at the bottom of that list, arguably. It's between Rodon or Sarr for me, and I just go for Sarr for the higher upside. Is Salah still worth being in the lineup? Well, he's not worth 14.3 million, that's for sure. And he's only got 2 goals, 2 assists in the Premier League this season, so I would say no, arguably. But for those that have him, it's a difficult situation because against Brentford away and Aston Villa at home, it would not surprise me to see him get a double-digit haul in one of those matches, but it's just difficult to kind of see that based on the evidence this season. So, difficult situation. If you already have Haaland, or you don't need to sell Salah to make other big upgrades, then you can keep him for the next week or two, but ultimately he is a sell. Is Stev or Rodon to bench? Out of those two, I'd probably bench Rodon, but there's not much in it. I would keep Saka, yes. Start Sarr or Reinders? Reinders. Is Stev or Rodon to bench? I just covered, I think. Start Xhaka or Sarr? I'd start Sarr. Reinders to Enzo or Gakpo? I prefer Enzo. Hi, Dylan. Who will you bench from Minter and Reinders? I mentioned this a few minutes ago, mate. I would rather start Minter, only just though. Very close question. Start Munoz or Dewsbury Hall? Dewsbury Hall. Best cheap defender who starts short term but benched in the long term? Achimpong. Who would you captain out of these three? Haaland, Semenyo, Cucurella? You saw my captaincy list a few times. It's Haaland. Sell Romero, Gyökeres, Elliot Anderson for Saka, Burn and Krupi Jr. all using free transfers. I don't think Gyökeres has to be sold, to be quite honest with you. I think Romero to Burn is good. But, yeah, Krupi Jr. and Saka look good for this week. I think Saka will play, by the way, same with Gabriel, but obviously he's a bit less likely. Long term, though, I think Krupi Jr. is a bit of an awkward price point, because then you're going to struggle to get to Igor Thiago, and even if you can do that, you might struggle to get to Voltemada, Mateta, Joao Pedro, and all these different 7 to 8 million forwards. And who knows, Gyökeres might now be buzzing, he might be in a purple patch, and he starts scoring goals for fun. You just don't know. I think selling him is a bit risky. I know using free transfers, but it does seem like very reactionary chasing last week's points. But Romero to Burn looks very solid. I think a Saka haul is incoming, but don't want to go against Haaland in terms of captaincy. Completely up to you, mate. I mean, Haaland's ownership is obviously very high. Saka is facing a decent Palace side who will be quite tough to break down. And ultimately with Arsenal, the goals can be shared. So Saka can get a big return 1 minute and then blank in the next like he did against Atletico. And even against Fulham, he got 7 points but didn't score or assist. So, yeah, I'd probably just go for Haaland personally, but if you feel that Saka will haul, why not? Estevil rode onto bench, yeah, covered a few dozen times, I think. What's your take on Dubravka against Wolves? Decent. I think it's possible for one of those teams to keep a clean sheet, which I said last week between Leeds and Burnley. And I started Dubravka, got the points. He's on my bench at the moment. I think Sanchez will start for me, but he's an okay player. If you got Dubravka, and let's say your other goalkeeper's a poor fixture, I wouldn't mind starting him against Wolves. I'm buying Munoz and Enzo for Gavardio and Reinders. Munoz looks good long term, just a bit awkward with the timing. Enzo looks really good. But there is a concern, of course, with Delap coming back very soon, and you've got Guiu potentially starting next week, or tomorrow, I should say. That could push Joao Pedro in the 10, which I think will happen, and Enzo Fernandez will play deeper, but he's still going to get attacking returns. Should I play Goodmanson ahead of Munoz? I think Leeds have a better chance of a clean sheet, but yeah, Munoz has so many avenues to points. I'd probably go for Goodmanson personally, because I think Arsenal will win, and I hope they do. What do you think of Nunes from Gameweek 13? Is that Matheus Nunes? No. I just wouldn't go for any City defender. No. Start Diouf or Kudus. Kudus. Who to sell to get Voltemada? I just keep what you have, mate. That's my honest answer. But if I had to pick one, Gyökeres. I don't like it, though. I'm tempted by Joao Pedro captain, but how can I when Haaland's doing a madness? Well, that's the point. You've got to take risks, and if you feel like a certain player's going to haul, buy him or back your guts, captain him, whatever it may be. Start him over another player, but yeah, that's the kind of risk versus reward factor. Haaland's effective ownership will be insane, but he's also got some tough fixtures, so it's a decent time to go against him, but no one else is showing that consistency. And Joao Pedro hasn't even had shots recently, let alone goals. So it's just all a matter of perspective. Thoughts on Reece James? I dissected him in a lot of detail in my transfer tips, to be fair, but yeah, short-term punt until Gameweek 13. I don't like him long-term. He's still injury-prone. He can break down at any minute, but I think for the next 3-4 weeks, he's fine. Munoz or Reinders to start? Reinders. Start Petrovic or Dubravka? I'd go for Petrovic, but not by much. Hey Dylan, I'm replacing Ivanosen. Should I get Gyökeres or Voltemada? I'd probably go for Voltemada in this case. I like Gyökeres still, but Voltemada offers better value. If you're buying in fresh, I think Voltemada's the preference, but that doesn't mean Gyökeres is a sell. Okay, I'm going to make my transfer, otherwise I'm going to forget to do it. So I think Dan Burn will come in, hopefully. This will probably fall on some deaf ears here, but hopefully people don't copy. Do what you want, it's up to you, but constant to burn is what I'm looking to do. So now I can bench Lacroix and have decent squad depth. You could even argue that's bench boostable. I do like Dubravka and Reinders this week, actually, but there's no space for them in my starting 11. So yeah, Dan Burn has come in against Fulham. That leaves me with one free transfer, so I could even make another transfer now up until the deadline in 60 minutes' time. But yeah, still a few things to consider. I'll probably bench boost in Gameweek 10. I think that's the best thing to do in my situation. So yeah, there's a few things to definitely think about. With the poll, Dan Burn, I think, was the overwhelming winner. It was a different result on the YouTube channel, but I think the context definitely swayed things. So 65% of you have gone for Dan Burn, with 300 votes as well. Thank you to those that voted, those that also took part in the live chat, gifted memberships, also become patrons or members themselves, and all the subscribers. Be sure to drop a like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, share this video around with those that love FPL News or Fantasy. I cover both of those formats until the end of the season. That's what I've been doing for the last 5 years now. And keep your eyes peeled for more FPL News or Fantasy videos. There could be a reaction stream tomorrow after the Saturday matches, so keep your eyes peeled for that. And in over a week's time, Matchday 4 content will return. I'm on the back of over 100 points in consecutive match days after a successful wildcard back in Matchday 2. Cryptus says, do I take a -4 to do Gavardio Reinders? Did I cover this? Gyökeres, Bruno, Tis Richard, Saka, Enzo, Mateta. I would say no, not a -4 for me. Start Estev or Munoz? Probably Estev. Who to buy for Borro? Long-term Munoz, but not this week. Anderson or Mateta? Is that Elliot Anderson? I'd go for Jean-Philippe Mateta anyway. Estev or Richards? Estev. Sarr, Gakpo, Enzo? Enzo. Now, if this question was made in Gameweek 10, I'd be tempted to say Ismaila Sarr. Stack or Goodmanson as the first sub? Probably Goodmanson. Best Newcastle defender? I think Dan Burn. Feelings on Foden this week? It's possible for him or Reinders to do well in these so-called tougher fixtures, but I still think Villa Park will be tricky. City could drop points here, and ultimately Foden isn't worth the price tag. He is a sell. So whether you keep him for another week or, you know, you persist with him, that's down to you, but I think Foden should be sold in the coming weeks. Dusty Parky says Raya, Timber, Senesi, Rodon, Reinders, Caicedo, Semenyo, Saka, Thiago, Haaland, Joao Pedro, Van der Ven, Tosin King for a -4 either in Dye, Bruno Gordon, or another suggestion for Reinders. I mean, possibly Bruno this week looks quite appealing, but I wouldn't buy him for a hit. Then it's Nottingham Forest away. We could see a manager bounce there on the Sean Dyche. I think just keep what you have. Not enough budget to buy Burn. Only 4.8. Well, yeah. I mean, Burn's my favourite Newcastle defender. Everyone will have their own opinion. But yeah, you're looking at, what, Botman's 4.9. You're really kind of limited here. Chow's also 4.9, so you can't get to a Newcastle defender then, basically. Bench one of Munoz, Gabriel, Burn, Tarkowski. I'd bench Tarkowski. No, sorry. I'd bench Munoz. Yeah, I like Munoz a lot. Long term, he's maybe my favourite behind Gabriel, but yeah, I'd bench Munoz. Is Salah still worth being covered? I think he's a sell over the coming weeks, but of course, if you can't make a massive upgrade with the extra funds, then there's a case to keep him for 1 or 2 more matches, but he's just a sell. Would you do Gavardio and Reyners to Chalobah and Enzo? Yes, I would. Start Dubravka or Petrovic? I would start Dubravka. No, sorry, I'd start Petrovic. I've had these questions before that I'm kind of doubting my own answers. Rain Feast, I'm guessing that's Reinders, or Stack to Enzo? I'd just sell Reinders, I guess. Bench Grealish or Reinders? I'd bench Grealish. Start Goodmanson over Reinders? I'd start Reinders. Hey Dylan, que bueno escucharte. Would you do Van de Ven to Gabriel for a -4? No, Gabriel's yellow flagged, and with Spurs defenders you can keep them for another week and then sell in Game Week 10. They have a terrible record against Chelsea, that's the time to sell. Kudus replacement? Enzo Fernandez are all covered earlier. Best 5 million mid? Granit Xhaka. Pope or Dubravka? Nick Pope. Mukiele or Diouf? Diouf. Yeah, Gabriel and Saka, even Rice weren't in training, or they weren't spotted in the training pictures. We'll see. It's either a lot of bad luck for Arsenal or mind games. We'll wait and see. Based on unclear info, I wanted to play quickly a free hit. I don't think that's a good idea. If you didn't think about the free hit all week and then suddenly you feel that way, then you're going to be rushing certain picks, in my opinion. And ultimately, if you get a lot of injuries and stuff and you get the information, then fair enough. But Gabriel and Saka, they weren't spotted in training pictures. That doesn't mean they're out. They could still play on Sunday. And it's a massive game for Arsenal. They want to build upon the momentum. They can't now start dropping points at home and let the likes of Liverpool and City back into the title race, or, you know, to close the gap on them. So, yeah, I personally don't think playing a quick free hit is viable this week. And I look at the fixtures and not many stand out to me. I think Jiff is a sell, yeah, but for those that have him, he's not a priority. He's a 4.3 million defender, and you could have, if you've got enough squad depth, you could just bench him or, you know, kind of reevaluate after this week. Considering Crystal Palace may score against Arsenal, is starting Dubravka better than Raya? Yeah, but Wolves could also score against Burnley, right? And Arsenal have the best clean sheet odds. If you've got Gabriel or an Arsenal defender starting already, I don't blame you for benching Raya. That's absolutely fine. But in terms of clean sheet odds, or any team to back defensively, I don't think anyone's more reliable than Arsenal across Europe. So it's up to you if you want to do that. But I also agree that Palace will score. But I also think that Burnley will concede against Wolves. So it goes both ways. Hi, Dylan, Dubravka or Donnarumma? I said before Dubravka, mate. I need two defenders to start, Rodon, Gay, and Esteve. Which ones would you choose? Saludos desde Ecuador. Good to see you, mate. I would go for Gay on the bench. So Rodon and Esteve to start. Sell or Doggy, buy Chow, bench one of Chow, Gabriel, Senesi, Gavardio. I think I'd bench Gavardio there. Would you start Mateta, play Thursday away to Arsenal, or Reinders might get hooked 60 minutes or less away to Villa? Well, that was kind of a rare exception for Reinders against Everton. I did mention this before, that Reinders could even be benched in that match in Game Week 8 for Kovacic, for example, because they had the Villarreal away game only a few days ago, and now they've got Aston Villa away. It's a very congested schedule, and City have some poor fixtures on paper, but yeah, I'd go for Mateta out of the two. Yeah, I think I would. Yeah. Who to buy between Mateta, Joao Pedro, and Voltemada? I did cover your question earlier, mate. I did. Joao Pedro's my answer. You said at the end of your message that you don't want to go for him now. It's up to you. Hey, Dylan just joined. Any news on Gabriel? Nothing really, except what I talked about earlier a few times. And yeah, Arteta said that he felt something against Atletico. He wasn't spotted in the training pictures. The same goes for Saka and Rice. We'll see if they're serious or if it's just mind games from Arsenal. Just to Parkeepers' team, like I said before, just keep what you've got. No need for a hit. Enzo Lacroix to start. Enzo Fernandez for sure. That's not even a debate for me. Do you regret not going for Mateta last week as it was suggested? I mean, who suggested that? He scored a hat-trick against Bournemouth. Congratulations, but I don't regret it, to be honest. I've got Voltemada. I bought him a few weeks ago. He might not have gotten a hat-trick, but he's gotten a few returns for me. Erling Haaland's the best forward in the game. And my other one, Joao Pedro, he's been disappointing, but I still think over the next 4 or 5, he could outscore Jean-Philippe Mateta. So, not really, mate. Bench boost for Goodmanson, Stack, and Bodder if Gabriel's yellow flagged. If you believe Gabriel will start, then go for it. I think that Gabriel will be in the lineup on Sunday, so if it's me, I'd bench boost. My current plan is to bench boost in 10, but that's because my players have better fixtures in 10. But yeah, if it was me, I'd go for it. I'm going to captain Bruno, 18 points incoming. I'd take that. Dylan, is it worth going ahead with a bench boost? Yes, in my opinion. Just once again, it's up to you if you think Gabriel starts or not. Kelleher or Dubravka, Dylan? Dubravka. I don't think Saka will be out. We'll see. He just wasn't in the training pictures. Welcome, FPL Blue Army. Bruno over Saka, I'm not so sure. But for those that have Bruno, I don't see a massive reason to sell to Saka this week. I think Gabriel will start, and I would start him in the FPL team. Would you start Munoz or Rodon? Rodon. Good luck all. I'm going to sleep first. It's 1:21 a.m. here. All the best, mate, and thanks for tuning in. Hey, Dylan, my team. 2 free transfers, thoughts? Yeah, looks good overall. In terms of things that I would change over the coming weeks, I think Grealish would be one of them. Lyle Foster potentially, and maybe even Eze. You've got 2 Arsenal midfielders, and I think 1 is probably enough. And it also deprives you of double Arsenal defense, which for me is probably the best way to go about it. But yeah, I think those 2 are probably sells. Maybe Virgil van Dijk in the coming weeks, but not priorities. So I don't think you need to make these transfers even now, but I think those 3 would be kind of bookmarked or highlighted as the ones to upgrade on in the coming weeks. I think it will be Achimpong and Chalobah, which I covered earlier, but unfortunately I had issues with the lineup graphics that I made earlier. I don't want to risk ending the stream because I think I would have to do something like that to make it possible. Buy Rodon or Mukiele or Keane? If I'm buying one now, I mean, Mukiele as a 5th defender is fine, but his fixtures are poor. If you're buying one now, it's probably Rodon with the West Ham fixture. Thanks, Dylan, although the other reason is Bruno or someone better than Rangers long-term. Yeah, of course, they are better. The hit could pay off, but I think with your starting 11 and your squad depth, even Rangers could do well against Aston Villa this week. I don't think it's like a massive priority. Mateta and Munoz are my possible next 2 transfers. Yeah, I'd prioritise that first, to be fair. I get what you're looking at, and ultimately the hit could still pay off. But I don't think I'd do it. Start Munoz or Senesi? Senesi. I believe Rangers will start. You saw that earlier in my predicted lineup section. Bench boost of Dubravka, Lacroix, Stack and Goodmanson. Yeah, looks decent. Ultimately, you're backing 2 Leeds players against West Ham. Good fixture, but Leeds can be unreliable. But I think that's fine. Raya or Dubravka? Raya for me. I think Dallo will start and Dorgu will be on the bench. But from what I showed you earlier, we could see Maguire and Mount drop out due to injury. They have a few knocks there. Start Xavi Simons or Reinders? I'd go for Reinders. Bench one of Reinders, Guiu or Paqueta? Very, very close. In this situation, I might bench Reinders, but I'm not a big fan. I'm thinking to start Rodon or Munoz. As covered earlier, I'd start Rodon. Is Burn and Minter to Rodon and Enzo worth it? Why would you sell Burn? Just a fun Enzo? I don't think that's worth it. Burn or Senesi? I prefer Burn. I just bought him in. I also had a poll out on my channel earlier and in the live chat. So my bench is Darlow, Mukiele, Caicedo and Lacroix bench boost. I'm a bit less keen on this one. You've got 2 players facing each other. Lacroix away to Arsenal. I think Gameweek 10 looks better for your bench. And that's the same for me. Thank you, Martin. Buena suerte, Dylan. Saludos desde Colombia. Gracias y buena suerte para vos también. Start Xavi Simons or Reinders. Yeah, Reinders, mate. Semenyo Haaland for captain. It's Haaland. You can see it on screen and also in my captaincy graphics earlier and in my videos. Kudus to Enzo. Yes. Diouf or Rodon. Depends who you're backing for the win. I've gone for Leeds to win, so I'm going to say Rodon. My captain is Haaland. Nothing special. Nothing out of the blue. Would you start Indai over Gyökeres or Kudus? I would start him over Kudus. So this is my starting 11. I've got Sanchez in goal, Borro, Burn and Gabriel, with Fernandes and Dai, Semenyo and Gakpo in the midfield, Voltemada, Haaland captain, and Joao Pedro. I've got Dubravka, Reinders, Lacroix and Reinildo Mandava on the bench. So if Gabriel misses out, I've got Lacroix coming in, and the plan for me is to bench boost in Gameweek 10. I think it looks even better in terms of the fixtures. MK says, which 2 would you bench from Munoz, Sarr, Goodmanson, Virgil, Paqueta? I would bench Munoz and possibly Goodmanson here. Dubravka or Verbruggen? I'm really confused. Dubravka. Bruno's a good captain. He's 5th in my list, but I think there are better options, naturally, like Erling Haaland. Hey, Dylan, start Tarkowski, Sarr, or Calvert-Lewin. Calvert-Lewin has a good fixture, but it's Calvert-Lewin. This might age horribly, but I'm going to say Calvert-Lewin. I feel disgusted by saying that. Dubravka, Foster, Grealish, and Reinildo, bench boost or not? I'd say leave it for Game Week 10, but yeah, Foster and Dubravka look good. I think Foster will start. Grealish against Tottenham is okay. Reinildo against Chelsea, meh. Not really good, but it's a decent bench. Ultimately, you have to temper your expectations with the bench boost. 10, 15 points in a single game week is fine. If you get more than that, you're a very happy man. Went with James for Borero, taking a gamble. Yeah, looks good. If I didn't have Sanchez, I would probably do something similar, but I don't need to double up on Chelsea defensively, and it also blocks me from Enzo or Caicedo in the midfield. Hi, Dylan. Thoughts on Joao Pedro captaincy? He hasn't gotten a shot away in the last couple of matches, let alone a goal. He is in my top 10 captains because of the fixture, and I think Joao Pedro will improve, but I just don't see myself captaining him over Haaland. That's just pretty much the way it is. He's 7th in my list, I believe, just behind Enzo Fernandez, actually. So I think he might be 8th, but yeah, Joao Pedro, decent option, but the form isn't there. My midfielders are Foden, Reinders, and Mbeumo Semenyo and Stack. I have 2 free transfers. Yeah, I would be looking to bring in the likes of Saka, Sarr, Enzo Fernandez. I think with this week in mind, I'd probably do Foden to Saka and possibly Reinders or Stack to Enzo Fernandez, but you might not have the funds for that. Reece James, I mean, what about him? I covered him earlier in my transfer tips. Decent punt until Game Week 13, but he's injury prone. Would you trade Kudus to Enzo? Yes. Is Keller, Kudus, Borro, and Reinildo bench boost worthy for this game week? It's fine. It's a good bench. I think so. Should I bench boost this week? Ghana is interesting. I mean, I'm not a big fan of him as an FPL asset. Gay kind of lets it down. Possibly, yeah. It's a good bench, good 15-man squad, but those 2 players in Ghana and Mark Gay, they kind of let down the squad overall. Hi, Dylan. Munoz first on the bench in case Gabriel doesn't start. I've got Lacroix. I think that's fine. Do you think Jadon Anthony scores? I'll say yes. Why not? Start one of Elliot Anderson, Gyökeres. Mate, you're not going to bench Gyökeres of Elliot Anderson. I mean, up to you if you want to do that, but yeah, I just start Gyökeres, to be fair. I would not sell Minter necessarily, but yeah, the deadline has passed. We are locked in. And yeah, I've covered a lot of questions here. Sell or keep Van der Ven? He is a sell, but with all these Tottenham assets, you can keep for the next week and then sell in Game Week 10. That might be the best in terms of timing. Yes, I think Gakpo will start. Which Chelsea mid do you recommend? Enzo Fernandez. Start Van der Ven, Sarr, or Reinders. I would have started Reinders. Who goes first on the bench, Sarr or Tarkowski? I prefer Sarr over Tarkowski, but not by much. Minter or Reinders? Minter. Sarr over Elliot Anderson? Yes. Sell Gakpo to Eze? No. Rodon or Richards? Long term it's Richards, but for this week, yeah, Rodon. Captain Semenyo, not for me, but all the best there. Reece James is fine, but he's not a long-term asset. He's very injury prone. He's going to start tomorrow. And up until Game Week 13, for those wildcarding by that stage, I think James is fine. And -4 for everyone who didn't do a like for Dylan. Thank you very much. Who to start? 2 from Gabriel, Anthony, Timber, and Diouf. I'd start Gabriel and Anthony and have Timber ready to come on if necessary because Gabriel could miss out on Sunday. Good luck, Luis Felipe, Lager, Goldhead, and also B34 first, 130. Hi Dylan, I wildcarded last week, so my team is stacked and I had to bench Chalobah. Do you think I'll regret this? Well, if you've got the bench boost in mind, or you still got it intact, you could play it in Game Week 10 now, if you feel like you're really stacked at this point. But yeah, I think Chalobah looks good for this week, but I did back Sunderland to score. So if that happens, you should be fine. Famous last words. Also, good luck to Awale. And yes, enjoy the weekend, Lager. Good luck to you, Dylan, mate. Yeah, I'm not sure, Golden, what happened there. Mate, let me see if I can do something now. But I've also I wanted to update the graphics for the predicted lineups. Just give me a second. Let me see if I can make this happen. This chat is really behind, by the way. trying to find one of your messages so then I can... Oh, yeah, I think this is probably the easiest way to do it. Let's see. No, it's not letting me do it from there. So yeah, YouTube is just being a bit finicky, but if I do see a message of yours on the main YouTube page, then I can just make you a moderator again, because I'm not sure what happened. Yeah, this has been very finicky. Maybe I'm going to refresh this. I think that's what I'm going to do. Because it's still loading messages from like an hour ago. Yeah, I think I can do it from here. Okay. Yeah, there you go, Goldhead. That should be sorted. Yeah, what I'm going to do now... Yeah, I'm going to take a massive risk, because I do still want to talk to all of you and answer a few more questions, but I'm going to switch the internet so then I can airdrop something. And then I can have the updated predicted lineup graphics, but it could cause the stream to just end. I hope that's not the case. I'm going to try it. It's going to be something different. So yeah, we'll see. We're going to be in uncharted territory here. And yeah, this could be a reference for future streams. Let's see, did that do anything? Okay, for now, I think it's good, right? Let me know if we're still live and everything, because I did switch things. And yes, let me drop this file. I still need to tinker with it a little bit, because I'm now going to have a previous version of the lineups, but it's better than nothing. Let's see if I can get this lineups. Yeah, I could do that as well. Okay, so if you haven't already, drop a like. I did answer hundreds of questions here and provide everything you need to know. We are 10 likes away from 200. I'll be going through FPL Challenge. A big up to all the new members and also to those that gifted those memberships. You're very, very much appreciated, and you're a big part of the community and to drive us forward across all the social media platforms. But yeah, let me go through the predicted lineups very, very soon. Before I do that, though, I'll quickly show you my FPL Challenge squad as things stand, which is subject to change. But to be honest, I do forget to actually change things when the games start and the lineups are out for every single individual game. So there you go. I'll have that on screen. And yeah, maybe we'll tinker with it live in this deadline stream. So let's get the lineups out, hopefully. Oh, that's still the wrong one. Okay, I need to overwrite that page. Okay. Okay, so before I do all this tinkering with the lineups, a big shout out to Mina for the super chat. Thank you very much. Just wanted to say thank you for the great content, and also thanks to you for the super chat and all the kind contributions and messages on the channel. So big up to you. All the best of luck for Game Week 9 and enjoy the weekend, that's for sure. Thank you, Goldhead, and no worries. Ride Salah from the team, says Easy. Yeah, that could obviously age horribly. We all know how Salah can be. There you go, Samuel. My FPL Challenge team is on screen. I see you scoring big this week, Dylan. Good luck to you and everyone in the chat. I hope so. The last 3 weeks have been very encouraging. 75 points in Game Week 7 and 8. Sorry, no, in Game Week 6 and 7, and 82 points in Game Week 8. So a bit of consistency, and the team looks good on paper, but if Gabriel misses out, I think my defensive line will be a little bit weaker. To be honest, significantly weaker, if we have to not, sugarcoat our words. Stress wildcards is easy. Well, hopefully the Game Week 9 number, the lucky number, plays a part in your fortunes. Locked in and good luck, Dylan. Decided to start Xhaka over Sarr. Hope Xhaka gets more points and Defcon. Yeah, I think Xhaka will get 3-4 points. He'll probably get Defcon. If he gets an assist on top of it, you're looking at a massive return. Yes, I also back Sunderland to score. Gabriel absent wouldn't be a problem for me at all. Good luck all. It might actually be a blessing in disguise for you, because others will struggle more so with that absence, and if you feel like you're in a good position to deal with that, that's a very healthy, an encouraging sign. Gone with Big Dan Burn, triple captain, pray for me. Well, you do have another one for the second half of the season, but that is, wow. I really hope for both of our sakes Dan Burn does the business. I just bought Joao Pedro. FPL gods, please don't let me down. Good pick, though. I mean, you're buying him at a time where people are selling, which isn't a bad thing. You're going against the crowd and the template, but he does remain very highly owned. I did Kudus to Saka. And next week, I'm going to do Bruno down and Mark Guiu up to Voltemada. I like that. Even though Bruno is arguably a hold, to bring in Voltemada for Guiu and then still bring in someone like Enzo or Ismaila Sarr for Bruno, that would be very encouraging, actually. I'll go for some more questions soon, but I do want to show you the West Ham and Leeds lineups in 10 minutes, and also, if I can, my final predicted lineups, because based on the press conferences today and a few quotes I've seen flying around, I would like to alter a few things, like with Man United, for example. Maybe one of Maguire or Mount drop out from the starting 11 with the knocks they picked up against Liverpool. So let's see. Let's bring this up. And let's see. I'm also going to go back to the other internet. Hopefully that doesn't cause the stream to crash. Okay. Yeah, I've got FPL Challenge. I've got Sal in FPL Challenge. I know it's crazy, but this week it's any player who has been at the club for 5+ seasons will get double points. And yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Salah did something. One for all ABC says, to sidetrack a bit, you really did very well for the Champions League on the last match day, and thanks for the picks on that. No worries there. So far, so good. Match day 1 was a bit disappointing for me, but match days 2 and 3 with the wild card, it's been a different story, so just have to continue with that. I made some bad transfers in match day 3, but ultimately, because everyone on Tuesday did well, I didn't really care about Gusto being benched and stuff, but that could be a concern for match day 4. Even my choice of 5 million midfielder isn't particularly great, but yeah, room for improvement. But Wednesday was quite disappointing. With Elise, Kane captain, and Mbappe, I thought I'd be cooking, but between them they got, what, 17 points, and that's because I captained Kane. Can't spell Bowen without Owen. Yeah, nice. I haven't heard that before. Everything is still running well, Dylan. Thank you for the update. I appreciate that. Semenyo is triple captain this week. All the best. I mean, Semenyo is fixture proof. He could still do well, but I think Sean Dyche will have them well drilled. It could be a cagey game. Yeah, and thank you to FPL Kevy. Got Bowen tonight. He scores and performs. I think he will. Even if West Ham lose, I've gone for 2-1 leads. I think West Ham could still get the victory. Okay, let's see if I can get this up. So yeah, looks a bit better. So I think this one had, yeah, Ekdal instead of Tuanzebe, which was the mistake I made. Okay, so Tuanzebe. Let's bring in Sesko. And maybe Cunha. Not Cunha, sorry. Let's see, let's bring in Cunha. And I might even put Euro in the starting 11 based on that Maguire injury update. Okay. This might even cost me a few points in terms of my scores for the predicted lineups, but there you go. Sometimes I look too much into what managers say, and then they end up biting me in the ass. So I'll try to get this done in just a few minutes and then go back to answering questions for the next 20-30 minutes maybe. So yeah, it should be fun. Sesko 7.3 million. Cunha 7.9. Okay, and then let's bring in, I think Euro did go down in price compared to before, yeah? No, he's still 4.5, okay. Maguire's not even flagged in FPL right now, but based on that comment by Amarim, so let's see if I can bring it up. Yeah, so he said this. The squad is fine. We have some doubts. We had some issues during the week with Harry Maguire and Mason Mount. Knocks, but nothing serious. We will see tomorrow. Lisandro Martinez is out. The rest are ready for the game. Yeah, nothing serious, but of course, there is a chance they could be rested or rotated a little bit. Difficult one to say, actually, based on that. I think maybe Mount drops out, Cunha, Sesko, together with Mbumo. But I might keep Maguire in the starting 11, actually. So I'm going to do that. We'll see how that ages. And I'm going to bring in Wan-Bissaka for Walker-Peters for West Ham. That's my final prediction just before the official lineups come out. And we'll see if that ends up costing me some points as well. But yeah, there you go. Let's bring in Walker Peters. Yeah, let's put in Wan-Bissaka. Okay, that should be it, I think. Now I just got to export it, and then I can show you my final predicted lineups again. So yeah, technology, eh? Bloody technology. Okay, so once this is done, I'll go to that. And then after that, you will see the official lineups for Leeds and West Ham for the Friday kickoff in just a few minutes. That is going to come out. So, let's start off with the Gunners, as we typically do. So I think Raya will be in goal. And despite being flagged after picking up a problem against Atletico Madrid, I believe Gabriel will start. Arsenal do have plenty of defensive coverage to fill in if needed. I think Calafiori and Timber will be the fullbacks, with Saliba completing the defensive line. Zubimendi, Eze and Rice in the midfield. Saka, Trossard and Gyökeres up front. But it is worth noting in the training pictures Arsenal released today, there was no Gabriel, no Saka or Rice spotted. That doesn't mean they didn't train, but it's not exactly what you want to hear going into a deadline. With Aston Villa, they've got some tough fixtures coming up, but Martinez in goal, Cash, Konsa, Pau Torres and Luka Dean. Kamara and Onana in the midfield, Guesson and McGinn as the wingers, and Rodgers just behind Ollie Watkins. Next up is Bournemouth. I think will be Petrovic, Jimenez, Diakite, Senesi and Troffer, Scott and Adams, Tavernier, Cliver and Semenyo, with Kruppi Jr. up front. We've also got Brentford. They typically go for a back five against the biggest and best teams in the country, and my biggest concern is whether it'll be Lewis Potter as the left wing back, or if Brentford will shift to a back four or keep that same formation that beat West Ham 2-0 on Monday and then go for Dango Ouattara instead of Lewis Potter. But if it's a back five, it'll be Kelleher, Coyote, Vandenberg, Collins, Adja and Lewis Potter, with Yarmoliuk, Henderson and Damsgaard, Igor Thiago and Kevin Schade up front. With Brighton, Verbruggen in goal, Vifa, Van Heck, Dunk and Kadioglu, Beleba and Ayari in the midfield, Minter, Jorginho Rota, Gomez and Welbeck, but if Mitoma is fit enough to start, he will do so on the left-hand side. We're now on to Burnley, with Dubravka in goal, Walker, Tuanzebe, Esteve and Hartman, Cullen and Florentino Luis in the midfield, who is excellent for defensive contributions, Bryn Larson and Anthony on the wings, and Ugochukwu, who scored in Game Week 8, just behind Lau Foster, who I think is cleared to play. Robert Sanchez, James, Achimpong, Chalobah and Cucurella, Enzo Fernandez, Caicedo, Estevao, Joao Pedro, Neto and Mark Guiu is my predicted Chelsea 11. With Crystal Palace, Henderson, Richards, Lacroix, Gay, Wharton. Let me just go back to that quickly. Mitchell and Munoz, that will be the sort of defensive line, with Sarr, Yeremy Pino and Jean-Philippe Mateta. With Everton, it should be Pickford, O'Brien, Tarkowski, Keane, Mikalenko, Garner and Garner, Dewsbury Hall, Ndai and Jack Grealish just behind Beto. Next up is Fulham with Leno, Castagna, Diop, Cuenca, Sessegnon, Sandenberg and Kearney. Wilson is a bit of an injury doubt, I believe. King, Iwobi and Jimenez. Now, Leeds United have released their official lineup, so we're going to compare my predictions to the official lineup, but so far so good. 83 out of 88, maybe the goalkeeper call, because I think Perry will start, has been a bit of a bold one, and maybe it doesn't pay off, but we'll find out, or you probably have found out already. I'll do so in a few minutes. With Liverpool, Mamardashvili, Bradley, Kanate, Van Dijk and Kirkes, Szoboszlai and Jones in the midfield, Salah, Wirtz, Gakpo and Ekitike. Manchester City are up next with Donnarumma, Nunes, Ruben Dias, Gavardio and O'Reilly. Nico Gonzalez is doubtful, but if he's fit enough to start, he will do so. Bernardo Silva, Reinders, Foden, Doku and Erling Haaland up front. With Man United, I've gone for Sesko up front and Mount to be given a bit of a rest, actually. So I think Cunha will start alongside Mbumo. Lamins in goal. De Ligt, Maguire, who is doubtful with a knock. And Shaw. Amad Diallo and Dallo as the wing-backs. Casemiro and Bruno Fernandes in the midfield. With Newcastle, Pope, Trippier, Chow, Botman, Burn, Tonali. If he's not available or not ready to start, it will be Jacob Ramsey instead. Bruno Guimaraes and Joelinton, Elanga, Gordon and Voltemada. With Nottingham Forest, Sells, Savona, Milenkovic, Murillo, Williams, Anderson, Douglas Luiz, Ndoye, Hudson-Odoi, Gibbs-White and Igor Jesus. Sunderland is up next with Rufs, Hume, Mukiele, Ballard and Renildo Mandava. Alderete will miss the trip to Stamford Bridge. Xhaka and Siddiqui in the midfield. Traore and Lefay on the wings. And Rig just behind Isidore. Tottenham Hotspur is the next team with Vicario in goal. Borro, Danso, Van de Ven and Spence. Paulinho and Bentancur. Kudus, Xavi Simons, Odobert and Richarlison. And yes, West Ham have also released their lineup and I'll be showing you it very soon, but that's what I predicted. And the final squad is Wolves. By far the worst, by the way, in terms of my predictions, but it is slowly getting better with a more established starting 11 for them. Johnston, Doughty, Santiago Bueno, Greci and Hugo Bueno, Andre, Menezzi and Joao Gomez, Arias, Rodrigo Gomez and Strand Larsen, but Hwang Hee-chan is available and we could see him start on the left wing. So I'm going to bring out the Leeds and West Ham lineups and have them ready for you in just a few seconds. And then I can see, okay, so it looks like my bold call has paid off. Not too shabby, but I haven't read the rest yet. So, with Leeds United, Perry does start, which I did predict actually. And you could have seen it. I have receipts. Bogle, Goodmanson, Rodon, Biol. So I didn't get that right. And it looks like Strauch is on the bench. Okafor is also available, and he starts over Harrison. So with Leeds United, that's 9 out of 11. No, 8, because Tanaka also starts. So I was getting gassed about my Perry pick, but yeah, the rest was a bit shit. But yeah, not bad. I'll take it. Ugh. Yeah, a lot of changes there for Leeds United. Understandably slow after their loss against Burnley. So yeah, Ampadu, Longstaff, Tanaka, Aronson, Okafor and Calvert-Lewin. That is the Leeds predicted lineup. At least I got Perry right. I'm happy about that. And with West Ham. Areola, Scales. Wow, I did not expect that to happen again. Or Scarles. Todibo, Kilman, Wan-Bissaka, Diouf, Soucek, Irving, Somerville, Bowen and Paqueta. So still no Wilson in the 11. He just isn't fit enough to start games, or they're kind of worried that they're going to risk an injury. So, you know, West Ham, I believe that's 9 correct. So Scarles was wrong and Irving. Yeah, the rest was correct. So that's 9 correct for West Ham and 8 for Leeds United in my predictions. I was expecting a little bit better, but there you go. At least I got the Perry pick right. Yes, I'm going to keep mentioning that. And let me know your thoughts in the live chat about both starting 11s. I'm also going to go through your other comments. We've just hit 200 likes. Thank you very much to those that are still here and showing support to the channel. You're massively appreciated. And thank you, Ignacio. Grande Dylan. Modo wildcard on. Thanks, mate, por tus sabios consejos. Gracias, Ignacio. Y todo lo mejor suerte para la jornada 9 y el resto de la temporada. El resto de la... No, that doesn't make sense. Played Minter over Rangers. Any thoughts? Well, I was asked a few times by you and a few others about this sort of question, and I was quite conflicted, but I did lean towards Minter in the end. Captain Joao Pedro, let's see how he'll do after the midweek rest. Good luck, Dylan. Likewise, I think there was only one other occasion where Joao Pedro got a rest in midweek in the Carabao Cup game, and he didn't do great, but I think he'll do well over the coming weeks. No Saka for me in FPL Challenge. Probably no Arsenal players, especially if Gabriel misses out. And yeah, that will be talked about very soon as well. Doing wildcard, more nervous than talking. I'm guessing taking yearly score test. Well, that means you've got your priorities straight. Or not. I'd never really got stressed during exams. I was quite confident. I did fairly well. Yeah, I think with FPL, I overthink. That's my main issue. But thankfully with this one, I didn't. I bought Dan Burn. That was my plan. There you go. Good luck, Weising. Is it true that Saka won't start? I don't know where you got that from in terms of him not starting. The only thing that we know is that in the Arsenal training pictures, Saka, Rice and Gabriel weren't spotted. Gabriel is the biggest risk with the yellow flag. I think Gavardia will play, but it's not a guarantee. I think O'Reilly will start left back, so then you could have Stones alongside Ruben Dias in central defence, but I think it'll be Gavardia. If it wasn't for Benfica being crap in Gameweek 1 and Sporting forward doing enough, I would be doing very well. Gameweek 2 and 2 not bad. Oh, 2 and 3 not bad, but 1 awful. Yeah, for me it's the opposite. Actually, no, what am I saying? Matchday 1 wasn't awful, but there were a few swings, like Trincao versus Pedro Gonçalves, which went against me, and I made a mistake about not going for Quenda, which was something I talked about all week. But yeah, I made up for it match days 2 and 3, but obviously you always want to do better and, you know, try to strive for perfection. After the loss to Burnley, I decided to keep Longstaff benched, Mukiele and Richards fill the bench, and Sarr starts. Yeah, Sarr can still pick up a return against anybody. We saw it against Liverpool a few weeks ago, but he does have his preferred opponents, like Liverpool and Aston Villa. If you have Sarr against those two teams, you always play him. That's the advice. I went with 4 at the back, Gabriel, Burns, Senesi and Goodmanson, with Reinders first on my bench in case Gabriel doesn't feature. Yeah, a few people talked about a back 4 or 5. That makes sense. I do like your squad though, but I would have probably started Reinders over Goodmanson. And either way, you've got the squad depth there just in case. I wish I would have Reinders coming in for Gabriel if that were the case and he missed out on Sunday, but I've got Lacroix instead. With Gabriel potentially out, I guess many players will be holding back on the bench boost. Possibly, but I did say this before. If you back Gabriel to start and you've got a good 50-man squad with promising fixtures, I just play it. But in my situation, looking at the fixtures in Game Week 10, I think it's just better to bench boost in 10 for me. Yeah, Stack and Strauch benched. Yeah, that's the big surprise there with Stack. I did hear some murmurings from Leeds fans about Strauch benched for Biol, but yeah, the Stack one's surprising. Leeds 2, West Ham 1, says Twisted Parky. Chelsea 2, Sunderland 1. Newcastle 1, Fulham 0. Man United 1, Brighton 2. Brentford 1, Liverpool 2. Arsenal 2, Crystal Palace 1. Or maybe, because you said now maybe 2-1 that Gabriel's out, so possibly you predicted a 2-0 before that. Villa 1, City 2. Bournemouth 2, Forest 0. Wolves 0, Burnley 2. Everton 1, Spurs 1. Looks pretty decent. Yeah. Thank you, Let's Talk Vinyl. 130 people left in the chat. Dylan deserves your hype. Yes, there is a button on the YouTube app now called the hype button. So just click it and we'll see where we can go from that. Wolves 0. Yeah, I covered that, didn't I? Everton 1, Spurs 1. Yeah, looks good. I think Everton can get a result against Spurs, but yeah, after the Aston Villa game, I was with a friend who supports Spurs, and he was really down about Tottenham, but I told him I thought they would get a point against Monaco. They did, albeit very fortuitously, and I thought they would get something in one of the next 2 games. Probably a loss against Chelsea, but I think against Everton they can pick up a result. Thank you, Ronak Rai. Skulls is Nuno's favourite player. Yeah, possibly. That'll be taken into account in my future predicted lineups. We'll see how he performs tonight. I'll be watching the game. With Foster out, I might go 0-0 or 1-0 either way. Forest Bournemouth might be tighter. Yeah, I originally went for 2-1 Bournemouth. Sorry, 2-0 Forest. Oh. 2-0 Bournemouth, but I changed it to 2-1 just because Sean Dyche got an immediate reaction, and I feel like he's going to get a reaction out of them in general. Yeah, Ward-Prowse was never a favourite for Nuno. When he was on loan at Forest last season, Nuno didn't play him. Then he went back to West Ham in January, so yeah, not a big surprise that he doesn't start. I had Darlow starting, so does that mean my bench goalkeeper comes on? Yes. And by the way, in my predicted lineup, I had Perry starting, so that was something I talked about in this stream. But ultimately, with goalkeeper transfers, you want to save them and focus on the outfield positions. Yeah, the game should be updating for everybody. That West Ham team beats Leeds, in my opinion. Yeah, possibly. It's a difficult game to call, but yeah, with West Ham, I thought they'd beat Brentford. They got absolutely battered. I got that absolutely wrong on Monday. Very difficult team to predict. But yeah, looking at both lineups, I think a draw's possible. I really do. But I'm going to stick with my original 2-1 Leeds, and we'll see how badly that ages. So I'm going to go back to FPL Challenge, and I'll probably... No, I don't have to refresh it because I've got James anyway. I've got no Arsenal players. I don't think that will change, actually, with a difficult fixture against Crystal Palace on paper. Yeah, for a few weeks now, there's been the hype button, maybe even since August. And yeah, they've been adding a few new features, which is good to see. I do like, obviously, the gifted memberships and stuff. And yeah, it's good to see people using it in the community. Kilman hat-trick coming up in an hour. Clean sheet would be enough, though. Yeah, it's very rare for someone to have Kilman, but all the best. Thank you, Dylan. I'll be looking forward to the reaction stream tomorrow. Good luck to you, bro. Likewise, Mina. And yes, tomorrow after the Saturday games, that is the plan, to do a reaction stream and then record a transfer tips on Sunday. So it has to be the YouTube app. If you're using like a browser, you probably won't see it, actually. So I think it's a YouTube app specific thing. Please get rid of that West Ham lineup. It's hurting my eyes. Worse than Potter. Job done there, mate. Don't worry. 2 steps ahead, even though it took me a while. Larry for Life says, thoughts on my wildcard, please. Lamens, Timber, Gabriel, Semenyo, Saka, Caicedo, Bruno Fernandes, and Dai, Voltemada, Haaland, Dubravka, Twansebi, Gay, and Obi on the bench. Okay, so there's a lot to like with this team. Gabriel's an injury doubt, but I think he'll play, and either way, long-term, he's the best defender. You've got a double up in the Arsenal defence. Semenyo looks good. Saka, Caicedo, Fernandes, and Dai. Voltemada, Haaland. My concern is with your bench. So Dubravka, no problems. But Twansebi and Obi on top of Lamens, those are the 3 concerns on the wild card. I think those 3 could be improved upon. My favourite goalkeepers are Raya and Pope, but I understand why you went for you went for Timber and Gabriel, so it makes sense for you not to go for Raya in goal. You don't have any Newcastle defensive coverage, and I think it would have been nice to have either Burn or Nick Pope in there personally. But yeah, having Obi in there, even Mark Guy would have been my preference, by the way, but it does block you from triple Chelsea. Yeah, that is probably going to be my main gripes. Your defensive line is quite cheap, actually. You've got 2 premiums in Timber and Gabriel, but you've cheaped out on the rest, and I don't know who your other defender is, actually. You are missing a player there. Since you've got 2 defenders on your bench and you've only got 2 in your starting 11. I went for Monaco to beat Spurs 2-0. I went for 2-2 in that game, and I've gone for the same scoreline again, since it was a goalless draw somehow. Monaco should have won. Don't know why YouTube changed my name back to FPL Kevy. Yeah, so it looks like, I think YouTube have done this, because before people were putting in super chats, I recognized the logo, but I didn't recognize the YouTube name, so I had to then think, wait, what was his name before? So yeah, I think that's a new YouTube thing, which I'm not too sure about. Just keep it the same, mate. The likes and dislikes button shape is different. They've changed a lot of things recently. I could tell. I think I was on holiday, and I was preparing graphics and stuff for Gameweek 8 at the time and Matchday 3. And I noticed that YouTube had changed a bit, but I wasn't using it much. I'm 42nd in the world in FPL Challenge, Dylan, and still top of your league. Really nicely done, KK Ball. Enjoy the membership for an entire month, by the way, and all the best for pushing towards first in FPL Challenge. FPL Kevy says, also did last minute, rode on to Virgil. Bit different, just see their fixtures are very good, hoping some clean sheets and change of form. Oh, you think that Liverpool's fixtures are great? I think Brentford away could be a banana skin, but I think Liverpool will win. And Aston Villa at home, yeah, they could concede, but yeah, I think Liverpool will get the result. I did back them to beat United and win their next 3 games overall. They didn't do that, but yeah, the Frankfurt game was perfect for them in terms of bouncing back. What's the shock result in UCL Matchday 3? Shocking result. I think Arsenal being Atletico 4-0 is a bit of a shock. Because I personally went for 2-1. I thought Arsenal would win a cagey game and stuff like that. So that would be one of the shocking results. Otherwise, I would be looking at... Yeah, I'll be honest, there aren't too many shocks, actually, if you look at the results. Not really. Oh, yeah. No, the standout result was PSV being Napoli 6-2. That has to be the shocking result. Then I'd say Arsenal. Yeah, that would be my answer. PSV 6, Napoli 2. I'm on Wildcard 9. Good luck all. Likewise, mate. Wildcard 9 could be pretty decent. I talked about that as a possibility in recent weeks, but yeah, for me, Gameweek 8 was the priority. I felt I didn't need to do that with my recent upturn in form, so I think Gameweek 13 is probably the most likely. But there are some downsides to that as well. Yeah, exactly that easy. PSV beating Napoli is the one. Are dislikes in the comment always there? In the comment section, well, there is always an option to downvote something, yes, but I don't think it would show if someone has downvoted it. So maybe that's new. I'll have to check. I have Chalobah as the defender I left out. Your thoughts on that? I had bench boost last week, so just wanted to get a solid 11. Well, it depends on your starting 11, which I think you put earlier. Oh, okay. Yeah, just a few minutes ago. I probably would have started Chalobah over one of Timber Gabriel, probably Timber, and then have Timber first on the bench and something like that, just in case Gabriel misses out. But yeah, either way, it doesn't really matter. If Gabriel misses out, you got Chalobah coming in, right? So we'll see what happens on Sunday. But overall, I just have concerns about Lamins, Obi, and your other player that I mentioned, which I believe was... Twansebi, yeah. I think those three are big concerns of mine. In Champions League, ended up with 70 points. Pavlidis, captain, then Hakimi, then Luis Suarez. 14, 14, 6, then Gameweek 2, 122 points, and Gameweek 3, 99. Great scores, though, in match days 2 and 3. Yeah, a lot of high scores are flying around recently, and I think match day 3 had the most goals in a UCL Gameweek ever in history. So, yeah, a lot of goals flying in, but the big hitters didn't really do it. Mbappe blanked, Kane scored 1 goal, Haaland as well. Probably expected a bit more from them, but it is what it is. They can't be robots every single week, as good as they are. So I'll be answering a few more questions then wrapping up. Thank you to those that liked, shared, subscribed. We are closing in on new goals like 37,000 subscribers, and I think in a couple of weeks' time we will reach that new objective. Okay. Let's see. So we've got a few more to go through. Thank you, Lager. Thanks for the stream once again. See you all. It was nice hanging out as usual. Yes, it's very much fun. I like making the videos and, you know, doing the pre-records and the graphics, but yeah, I think the streams are the best part. That's for sure. Liverpool winning 5-1, given their recent form, especially with Salah benched. Yeah, and Salah did miss a big chance when he came on, and ultimately Liverpool have to think outside the box a little bit to find that balance, but I think Wirtz has been slowly getting better over the last couple of games, and yeah, against Frankfurt, you got those 2 assists. Yeah, João Pedro will start. It's just a question of whether it'll be up front or as the attacking midfielder. Evening, James. Missed the stream. When are you back on, mate? Tomorrow night? Yeah, I think so. The plan is to do it after the last Saturday game, because the Saturday streams tend to be a bit more popular than the Sunday ones. So the problem is the last game is at 8 p.m. between Brentford and Liverpool, but maybe by that stage. So after Brighton United, from 7:30 onwards, there could be a stream. I think that's the plan, and do a bit of a Liverpool watch along. That might be the plan, yeah. I'll keep you posted either way. Obviously, sometimes it will be on Sunday. It depends on, you know, my schedule and when I'm available or not, but tomorrow night I should be good. Thanks for sharing your views on my team. Hopefully I can still get a very good wildcard points. Yeah, you certainly can. And 2 of the concerns I've got are on your bench, so it's not like panic stations or anything, but I think in a couple of weeks' time, and you might still have a lot of free transfers at your disposal, you can use that to make those incremental upgrades. Yeah, I think it will be tomorrow, Lager. Not on Sunday, but I'll obviously keep you updated on that. There's a new Sweden champions. That only has a 1k population, Fisherman Village. I actually wasn't aware of that. Thanks for keeping me posted on it. And now playing in the UEFA Champions League playoff for next season. Interesting. Yeah, I just wasn't aware of that. Cheers for the stream, mate. And as always, green arrows. Good luck. Likewise, FPL Kevy. Always a pleasure. The coach is a primary school principal. That is insane. Pratik says, rate my final wildcard. Yeah, looks solid. I would probably say an 8, maybe 8.5 out of 10. I just don't like Diouf, to be honest with you. And you've got 2 cheap defenders. My preference is to have a bit more money invested. I know you've got Gabriel and Timber, but yeah, you also might want the likes of Munoz in the coming weeks, or a Palace defender. Dan Burn. but of course you got Pope in goal, so that makes sense. But yeah, those would be my main issues. The rest looks very solid. Started Raya, Gabriel, Byrne, Munoz, Senesi, Semenyo, Gakpo, Caicedo, Indai, Haaland, Joao Pedro, and Guiu. Looks good. Yeah, I think that's absolutely solid. Obviously, you've got a few kind of clashes, or you've got Arsenal and Palace players, but they're all in the defensive line. And if it's a goalless draw, you'll be a very happy man in FPL terms. No money in the bank, says Pratik. Yeah, you used all of it. Yeah, like I said before, my only concerns are your defensive line with Diouf and Mukiele at the same time. They could be improved upon. Mint is good, but if possible, I would rather stretch to like an Enzo Fernandez or Sa. But ultimately, it's still a good team, and that would require a downgrade elsewhere. Hi, Dylan. I did Salah to Saka, Richarlison to Voltemada, Foster to Mateta, Gavardio to James, 4 free transfers. Yeah, looks solid. I'm on board with all of them, even though I think Salah could still perform well tomorrow, but ultimately he has a sell. Yeah, starting Dubravka instead of Raya, and Anthony against Wolves, hoping for some points this game week after weeks of pain. Yeah, I think those that are going for Dubravka over Raya, especially with Gabriel or Timber in their defensive line already, it makes sense, but I personally would go for Raya, and Anthony is a decent option for the weekend. Magic, look forward to it, bud, and sounds good. Thank you, James. That's the current plan. Things do change, obviously, on a regular basis, but yeah, typically this season I've been doing it on Saturday. Liverpool watch along will be fine. Now I just got Virgil van Dijk. Yeah, I do expect them to win, though, and I'm not going to get emotionally attached, I believe, unless Brentford are like 3 or 4-0 up. But yeah, even if Liverpool do somehow lose or drop points, I still think they're in the title race, but obviously it would take them a lot of catching up to do. Just missed the deadline, I can't believe it. That typically happens on Friday. It's less common on Saturday, even though some people sleep in, I guess, especially in the UK, but yeah, it does happen on a Friday. Thank you, Pratik. I'd have to downgrade Minter to upgrade Diouf. Yes, that's the problem. Otherwise, you downgrade a player that you and I both like to then get the likes of Enzo Fernandez or Sa. Salah confident drop after realising his poor performance. I still think he starts tomorrow. He got the benching against Frankfurt, but he'll be motivated to turn that around, and he's desperate to score at the moment. I actually wasn't aware that he removed all Liverpool-related stuff in his social media. Is that really the case? That would be a bit of an overreaction. Top 10k in UCL Fantasy, same here. Very good progress in the last couple of weeks, and the plan is to keep on pushing. How's Josh King for next week against Wolves over bringing in Saka? Nah, there's no debate about that. Saka's obviously levels above, but he's also way more expensive. In terms of budget midfielders, I still prefer Xhaka, Caicedo, Minter arguably, even though he's technically mid-priced. But yeah, I wouldn't go for Josh King. Liverpool's defence is very suspect. I don't think it's shambolic or like irreparable. And let's not forget they kept a few clean sheets early in the season, despite being a bit fortuitous with some of them. But I think they'll keep a clean sheet tomorrow against Brentford. I think it'll be cagey, a bit similar to the game earlier in 2025 when Darwin Núñez came off the bench and scored 2 late goals. I think Liverpool would just about shade it. Mark Gay signing for Liverpool next season, but he's also linked to Bayern Munich and Real Madrid, so it's going to be more difficult to acquire his signature. Apparently Salah did, but I'm not sure if that's the case. Surely not. That'd be a very big overreaction. But I'll have a look. Let's see. I don't really follow these players on social media, but maybe it's more of an Instagram thing. I mean, he didn't delete all his Twitter posts, that's for sure. I'll just check now. On his handle, I don't know what he had before, but he has nothing in there. It just says he's in Liverpool, England. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. And there is obviously a lot of fake news going out there, so just be careful. But yeah, that would obviously be a bit like throwing your toys out of the pram. Yeah, he doesn't have like Liverpool or LFC in his bio on Twitter or Instagram, but he still has a lot of the posts up. Yeah, I haven't been following Salah. Sometimes his posts come up for me, especially during Christmas, for obvious reasons, but yeah, interesting. I hit the yellow flag on players. I've sold Okafor with -4. I believe Okafor was orange flagged, which kind of put me off from the predicted lineups, but yeah, I should have put him in there. He's so important to Leeds, and before the Burnley game, when Okafor was ruled out, people were saying, oh yeah, like, you know, Leeds fans were believing that they wouldn't score against Burnley, and that's what ended up happening, so I was quite happy and fortunate with the Dubravka points there, but yeah, Fabrizio did say over a week ago that Okafor will be back between 7 to 10 days, so yeah, I should have put him in the predicted lineup. The deadline already passed, mate. That's why there's no timer anymore. It went by 42 minutes ago. Or downgrade Minter and upgrade Caicedo to Enzo. Yeah. And ultimately, if you downgrade Minter, do you go to Xhaka, possibly? It's not terrible, but it's not like a massive upgrade. I think there is abuse from Liverpool fans to Salah. Yeah, but that's stupid, isn't it? I mean, he's one of their biggest legends. Holding on to my free hit, any suggestions for best game week? Gameweek 11 is quite appealing, actually, but it's all team dependent. For some people, it might be a little bit different. For example, they might consider Gameweek 13 or something like that, but in my situation, Gameweek 11 is a real possibility, but right now my focus is on the bench boost. I'll probably do that in Gameweek 10. After that, I'll be considering the free hit as well. Yeah, he took picks off both Bio Salah. Yeah, so Easy was correct. I'm not sure why. And for the Agenda says that Salah removed the Liverpool-related stuff. Yeah, it's ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, back in the day, maybe it wasn't like abuse or like threats or anything, but with Real Madrid, they were sending abuse to Mesut Ozil and all these like Galacticos, these amazing players, and Cristiano Ronaldo. Could you imagine? Like, it's insane. And I think that season Ronaldo got 69 goals, so yeah, I mean, fan bases are volatile and crazy, especially at the so-called big clubs, and they're kind of spoiled. Yeah, that's ridiculous if he's getting abuse from them, but it happens, right? When you're not performing, you get criticism, and I think that's obviously absolutely fair game, right? But then when it goes a bit further than that, that's a different story. So thanks, everyone. It has been a blast talking to you for the past 3 hours, and hopefully in a couple of days' time, I'll be fully recovered from this bloody illness, which comes from this amazing weather in the UK. If you haven't already, like this stream, subscribe to the channel, and also the notification bell so you're always up to date on my content, both FPL and UCL Fantasy, which I'll cover until the end of the season. Follow me on X, Instagram, and Blue Sky, DylanRCM. You can also find me by typing FPL Dylan. There's my Discord server, my FPL League, Spotify, and much more in the description. That includes my Patreon and the Championships. Click the join button on YouTube and go to patreon.com/FPL Dylan for likes to my videos, prior to reply to comments, amongst many other perks. A big shout out to all the members and patrons in the building, the subscribers, and also to those that gifted memberships, all the super chatters. You're massively appreciated, and I'll see you very soon, probably tomorrow, for the reaction stream. Yeah, look, Liverpool and Madrid are obviously big clubs. I'm not saying or insinuating that they aren't, but yeah, it's kind of like a little dig because of their petty behaviour. There is no one who could replace Salah, to be honest. He's frustrating, but he's one of a kind. Exactly that, but look, what he did last season was incredible. I was surprised by the sheer volume of output until February, but then we saw a clear kind of downgrade or downturn in form. I still think he's got a lot to offer Liverpool. He's going to score some big goals and win some trophies, but yeah, you just got to be realistic. Salah's not going to be the same player he was last year or, you know, for his entire Liverpool career forever. There's going to be a drop-off, and maybe we're seeing it now, but never underestimate Salah. He is one of the best Premier League players in history. He may have a sloppy touch, but he's clutch. Yes, Salah's not the most technically gifted player. He is a goals and assist machine. Pure output. He's quick. He's got a few great goals in him as well, of course. And yeah, in terms of right wingers, he's up there with Cristiano Ronaldo, which is the best compliment I can give him. Considering Munoz for triple captain against Wolves in Gameweek 12, is that mad? It's something different. With Haaland having difficult fixtures like Liverpool, I think by that stage, it's not a terrible idea. So it could definitely work out, but I'm not really a big fan of captaining defenders, even with DEFCON. I'm always of the opinion that a midfielder or forward is safer when it comes to the captain, but sometimes safer isn't better. So it's definitely something left field, and it could be considered. Thank you, Pratik, and always a pleasure to talk to you and everyone else in the building. I'll see you very soon for more FPL and UCL Fantasy content. I wish you all the best of luck for Gameweek 9 and the rest of the season, and I'll see you very soon for the reaction stream.